lots. It's a very large city. Single-family properties. The majority of those are what's called R1, or zoned R1, which most of those are about 5,000 to 6,000 square foot lots. The typical or average size home in the city of LA right now is 1,700 square feet. Under the new ordinance, if you were in that 5,000 to 6,000 square foot lot and you had this, let's say your home is 1,500 square feet right now, you could build a 3,000 square foot home on a 5,000 square foot lot, or up to a 3,600 square foot home on the 6,000 square foot lot, and that would not be counting the two-car garage. So what we did was allow plenty of room for expansion, remodeling to meet the needs of a growing family, but what has been limited is being able to suddenly see a 7,000 square foot house or a 6,000 square foot house on your neighbor's lot next door to you.
To be clear, I think you're talking not about the footprint of the house, but the square footage that might include 2 floors, for example.
Exactly. It's not the footprint. When I say FAR, that's the floor area ratio. That we have a certain ratio for each one of those lots. The square footage, though, is the total that would be on all floors of the house.
Got it. Would you need your neighbor's approval, or would it have to pass muster, for example, with a neighborhood council first?
No, it would still be, you would still just go to the building department with your plans, and as long as you're within the limits of the ordinance, there's a baseline amount, and then there's a bonus that you can get depending on the design of your house. If it has some articulation, you get that extra 20% bonus. But it's still just going directly to plan checked. The only way that you would need to get approval is if you wanted to do something above and beyond these baseline limits. And then if you were trying to get an adjustment or a variance, you would have to go through a process that required approvals and hearing.
Conceivably, there could be some flexibility or exceptions to these rules that you've laid out.
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that happened as we went through this process and continued to fine-tune the ordinance. One of the flexible components that was put into it was a residential floor area district. That is in the ordinance. It's not applied anywhere in the city, but it allows individual neighborhoods, if they have special needs or feel that the special character of their community is such that this baseline ordinance is not working for them, they can work with their neighbors and come in and create a special district that will give them special regulations to maintain the character of that community. In such a large city, even though this is not a one-size-fits-all and there's a whole range of floor area ratios and sizes to meet the different zones, we wanted to recognize that there still are needs in individual neighborhoods that might not be met. So there's this flexible tool that is there, and we expect to hear from some communities to use that.
Does the ordinance, as it's now written, include hillside or coastal properties?
Excellent question, and we've started having calls already from folks to find out whether they're included or not. It includes, as I said, over 300,000 properties, but it is in the flat areas of the city. It does not include the hillsides or the coastal. But as part of this ordinance, there was also a provision that we begin working immediately on the hillside areas, and staff is already starting work on those areas. So we expect to be going out and doing the same type of public outreach, going to communities and working with the hillside communities so that they can get the benefits of a mansionization ordinance as well.
Very good. Thanks for clearing that up. Principal City Planner Betsy Wiseman, thanks for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Thank you.
Again, the mansionization measure was approved with a unanimous vote of 12 ayes. The residential hotel ordinance was also approved unanimously with 13 ayes. On Wednesday, May 7th, the Council considered items 35 and 36. 35 addressed repeated incidents of noise complaints about roosters. Item 36 was a motion restricting the ownership of roosters. Admitting this might not be a problem for everyone, District 15 Councilmember Janice Hahn says there have been many complaints about roosters and explains what research has revealed.
Okay, colleagues, we're going to take item 35 and 36 together. 35 is how to deal with noise complaints from roosters, and 36 is limiting roosters to one per home, grandfathering in those who might already have more than one rooster right now. This might not be a problem for everyone, but it has come to my attention because many of my constituents, particularly in Harbor Gateway and Watts, have complained about roosters. I certainly never intended to interfere with the rights of people who use chickens and roosters to feed their families. People are entitled to a certain amount of their judgment in their own homes, which is why we as a city have ordinances and processes to deal with sometimes the noise that come from barking dogs or other animals. But in researching the problem further, my staff found that another problem associated with the number of homes that we have complaints against is that they have more than one rooster, and they also are involved in cockfighting, which we know has ties into the gangs in Los Angeles.
Supervising attorney for the City Attorney's Animal Protection Unit, Bob Ferber, talks about blood sport and what his task force has come up against while out in the field.
As you know, the city and the city attorney's office and LAPD and Animal Services are targeting blood sports. For many of you may not be as familiar with cockfighting as dogfighting, but it is as bloody, as brutal, if not more, than dogfighting. The origin of this ordinance, especially I'm focusing on 36, years ago when we didn't even have the task force yet, I was going out with LAPD and we were surveying locations around the city where roosters were being raised. And it dawned on me one day, we watched went to 7 different property locations, and the numbers of roosters ranged from 300 to over 1,000 roosters on a 2 to 3 acre properties that were no larger than 2 to 3 acres, and not a single chicken anywhere. There is only one purpose for a location with 1,000 roosters in the city of Los Angeles, and it's not for the 4-H club. These are roosters that just by visiting the location, their proximity, the way they are being held, it is overwhelmingly evident that these locations are being used for cockfighting.
All right. That item is now before us. So there are no other speakers on the queue. Madam Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
12 ayes.
Thank you. Again, this item will be coming back with the actual draft ordinance.
And joining us now is District 15 Councilmember Janice Hahn. Ms. Hahn, always great to have you on Council Week in Review.
Thanks, Jack. It's good to be here.
Noisy roosters, probably some grins and giggles when this topic first came up, but for a lot of people this is really serious, isn't it?
Apparently it is. It's a very serious issue in Los Angeles. In fact, our Department of Animal Services told me that they get 50 calls a day regarding roosters. It certainly wakes people up, and apparently they crow all day long. And it's a noise issue, but it's also an issue related to cockfighting.
Good point. I want to get into that in a minute. But now, as for this ordinance, barking dogs, crowing roosters, to be handled pretty much the same way now. There's a question about Animal Services, of course, having the resources to take on these additional responsibilities.
Right, which is what we've asked them to do. We've asked them to tell us how they could implement this in a tough budget year. But if we can handle barking dogs, we ought to be able to handle crowing roosters. And people need to know that when they call and complain, that they get some kind of response. And hopefully we address it in the same way. You go out, you give people warnings. If it keeps going on, ultimately it could lead to the removal of the animal from the property.
Well, in fact, this ordinance doesn't limit the number of chickens allowed, only roosters. And perhaps most people know you don't need a rooster for chickens to lay eggs.
Well, I just learned that fact the other day. I did not know that. But those ladies don't need the men to lay the eggs. They only need the roosters to fertilize them. So chickens can lay eggs. So if people want to continue to have eggs for their family and their friends, they don't need a rooster for that.
Male of the species, irrelevant as always, I guess.
You said it, not me.
I had to. The ordinance limits ownership to one rooster, of course, but allows up to 3 under certain circumstances, as we understand it. What would those exceptions be?
Well, under the proposed ordinance, everyone can have 1 rooster per household, but you could apply to have up to 3 with a permit. So anybody can apply to have more than 1 rooster, up to 3, but you have to assure the city that they will not be a nuisance to your neighbors.
There's some talk of grandfathering in previous rooster owners. Does this mean somebody who already owns more than 3 roosters can keep them?
Well, what it means is if you have 3, you will be grandfathered in, but you cannot have more than 3. So even if you have more than 3 roosters right now, you can be grandfathered in only for up to 3, and after that, we're not going to allow any more roosters per one property.
You did bring up the notion of cockfighting within the city of Los Angeles. Has this really been a large and growing problem, and is there anything else being done about that issue?
It's a terrible problem. People bring, hundreds of roosters to locations where they engage in cockfighting and illegal betting. It has ties to gang violence, but really is a very inhumane problem, and it leads to all sorts of other crimes. But we do have an animal cruelty task force within the LAPD who right now go out there and investigate these problems, and this ordinance will help them do that job better. But it's a terribly a cruel kind of thing to have roosters involved in. I
happened upon a cockfight in progress on the island of Bali once, and I can tell you, I never want to see one again. It is just awful, and I can't imagine why anybody would participate in it.
It is terrible, and kids that have to witness that, and many of the kids are around there when the cockfighting is going on. Again, it's a very ugly, bloody sport. It maims the roosters, and it's really an inhumane way to treat these animals.
Some communities, in fact, have a total ban on roosters. Perhaps that would be appropriate for a metropolitan area like Los Angeles someday, do you think?
Well, I do know that other municipalities have banned roosters altogether. We're looking for something that works within Los Angeles, and we want to give responsible rooster owners an opportunity to have roosters.
During the conversation in council on Wednesday, it was said that neighbors of some rooster owners were really reluctant to file a complaint for fear of, retaliation, for example. Does this ordinance address that concern? And what would be the proper procedure for filing a complaint about a noisy rooster?
Well, that's always a problem in Los Angeles. Whatever crime people are reporting, everyone's afraid of retaliation. And again, since these roosters and the cockfighting are associated with gang members, people are even more afraid to come forward. But everything in the city of Los Angeles is able to be, every crime is able to be reported anonymously. You can call the police department, you can call 311, and you do not have to leave your name if you so choose. We want to make sure that people come forward, are protected themselves while they're able to report these crimes.
I know that some dog owners, for example, have found ways to suppress a bark in a barking dog. Have you heard of anything along these lines with roosters, for example?
I haven't. I know that there's some method that can be done to kind of impair the vocal cords of dogs. We're not suggesting that. I've never heard of that for roosters. Again, but we think limiting the number of roosters to 1 per household will certainly go a long way towards reducing the noise in and around residential neighborhoods.
Now, I'm sure most sharp-eyed viewers have already noticed that you are wearing a lapel pin, and it looks suspiciously like a rooster.
Well, just to make sure people don't think I am anti-rooster, I actually think roosters are a great animal. In fact, my name Hahn in German actually translates to rooster. So my house is filled with the kind of roosters that don't make any noise. I actually collect inanimate roosters in my house.
I've known you and your family going back a very, very, very long way, and I never knew that before. Is that the reason why you collect roosters?
It is. It is. And when people ask me, I say, well, my name Hahn means rooster.
That's amazing. What a coincidence. So
which is why I like roosters. I want to protect them, and I think this ordinance is going to be good for those roosters in Los Angeles.
And of course, you've gone from goats to alligator, now to roosters. There's almost a trend going here in the 15th District.
It does seem like that. Of all the issues I'm working on, these are the ones that seem to get the most attention. But these are all issues that really involve people in their neighborhoods.
Also this past week, back to a serious subject, there was some question about contracts with the airport, and especially the airport modernization effort. The committee you chair, Trade, Commerce, and Tourism, reviewed these contract procedures with the airport's executive director, Gina Marie Lindsay. Briefly fill us in, if you could, on the results of that review.
Well, we did. We looked at a couple contracts that were being awarded at LAX, and what everyone should know is that the modernization of LAX, our airport, is so critical. We have not modernized that airport since 1984 when we had the Olympics here, and we built the Tom Bradley International Terminal. We know that other international airports look a lot better, are more efficient, are more effective, are more inviting to the public, and LAX needs to be modernized. So these contracts that we're going to begin awarding on our way to billions of dollars in airport modernization need to be awarded in the most transparent, honest, and fair way. So we questioned a couple of the contracts that were awarded recently about the modernization. We feel like Gina Marie Lindsay, the executive director at the airport, is a great person to run that airport. She understands the need to modernize this airport. But we found a couple of areas in the contracting process that could be probably tightened up a bit, cleaned up a bit, so that as going forward, we will have the most fair, transparent, open, and honest process in which to award contracts out at this airport. So I think we might make a few changes in the process, but we certainly came away not feeling like anyone had done anything wrong at the airport.
It was suggested at one point that, in fact, Ms. Lindsay might be in for micromanaging by the City Council, and I think you don't view it that way.
Well, we don't. We believe that the good general managers should run their departments. We have a series of commissioners that sit also as oversight committees of these departments, but it is our obligation on the City Council to provide checks and balances. We are the elected body in the City of Los Angeles, and it is up to us to pay attention to what's going on in every area of the city and make sure that we are watching the public's purse and that we're watching and make sure that all things are done fair and honestly.
Well, and we hope that you will keep coming back and keep us updated on how the whole project is going. District 15 Councilmember Janice Hahn, as always, thanks for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Thanks, Jack.
Again, your Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously to request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance restricting ownership of roosters. And we'd like to thank again Councilmember Janice Hahn and City Planner Betsy Wiseman for taking the time to join us on this week's program. LA City View is the government access cable channel for the City of Los Angeles, featuring live coverage of City Council meetings and programming about City Department services and events. And you can watch City Council meetings live or view past meetings by going to the city's website at lacity.org and follow the instructions for video on demand. Also, we invite you to address the Los Angeles City Council on any item on the council agenda, as well as during public comment. You may come downtown to City Hall or go to the Van Nuys City Hall and participate via video teleconferencing. Remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings, also beginning at 10 a.m. Council Week in Review can be seen Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. and on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending May 9th, 2008. On behalf of Martine Martinez and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
In the city of Los Angeles, when duty calls, the LAPD responds.
Hey, John, lower the gun, buddy. John, leave the gun.
Working as a team.
Go ahead and put the gun down. John, nobody's going to come at you, all right? But I'd feel a whole lot better if you were to lower that gun.
To protect and to serve.
Why don't you come back here to me, all right? All right, that's good. Walk toward me with your hands up, John. Put your hands up.
All units code 4 to 6.
Thanks for working with me.
291, show me code 6 on the auto search for the Amber Alert.
To fight crime and to keep our streets safe.
Another positive hit on this bag. We believe at this time that the vehicle is in our custody.
Any available unit to respond to the northeast corner, 7th and Bullets for the Amber Alert mission.
6K 253 Roger.
What's your next 11? Show us responding.
Cycle 2, we're around.
This is it.
For the officers of the LAPD, it's all in a day's work. Protecting our families.
Look at your daddy.
They take pride in what they do.
Code from the Amber Alert. Missing child found and returned to parent. Suspect in custody.
LAPD is hiring. Become a part of the team. Visit us at joinlapd.com.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
Very good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, May 14th, 2008. We are in the John Ferraro Council Chambers, room 340 of City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. I'm City Council President Eric Garcetti. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Jose Huizar, Tom LaBonge, Jan Perry, and Dennis Zine. That constitutes so far 5 of us. We need 5 more to begin the meeting. And pursuant to City Council rules, all council members should be in their seats and present at the top of the hour. Mr. Parks and Mr. Reyes are excused today, but otherwise we're expecting all council members to join us. So if we can please implore council members Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruel, Hahn, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, and Wesson to join us as soon as possible. We will be able to begin the meeting. I want to welcome our audience here in council chambers as well as the viewers on Channel 35. LA City View, your city channel, is broadcast through the city's cable system, and we are available live during each of our council meetings, as well as rebroadcast by the fine folks over at LA City View in the evening as well. We're also available through your computer on the internet. If you go to lacity.org, there is a host of information on city services, your elected officials, and ways to improve the quality of your life in Los Angeles. But you can also watch our city council meetings through webcast. Archived footage of our past meetings is available through our city's webpage as well. Again, that's lacity.org. And if you don't find yourself near a television or a computer, but you do have your telephone, you can always call in and listen to the audio proceedings of our city council meetings and any of our committee meetings as well through a service called Council Phone. That number is 213-621-CITY, 213-621-CITY. And we do have archived footage as well, audio footage of our past council meetings. You can get podcasts of that as well by subscribing online. I want to thank Councilmember Smith, who has joined us now. We're at 6 members. Our agendas for the City Council meetings are available online, in person, at the City Clerk's office, or here in Council Chambers. Those are made available 72 hours in advance, 24 hours in advance for any special meetings. If you'd like to be heard on any of those items, all items receive a public hearing either in committee or here in the full council. If it has not yet received a committee hearing, by the time it gets to council and you'd like to be heard, fill out a speaker card in the back of our council chambers or in our Van Nuys council chambers where you can remotely testify. Give that to one of the sergeants at arms or the staff there, and we will make sure that you are heard. Lastly, if you want to be heard for general public comment, which is for items that are not on the agenda but nevertheless under the jurisdiction of the City Council, please fill out a speaker card, put public comment in the upper right corner, and that's one of the sergeants at arms, and we will be sure to hear your comments. Again, we are awaiting a quorum. That is 2/3 of our 15-member body, or 10 members. Again, pursuant to council rules, all council members should be here. Councilmember Alarcon, we're awaiting you. Councilmember Cardenas, we are awaiting you. Councilmember Gruel, I know is stuck in traffic. She's on her way. We are awaiting her. Councilwoman Hahn, we are awaiting you. Councilmember Rosendahl, we are awaiting your presence. Councilmembers Weiss and Wesson as well. We want to thank the members of the public for their patience while we await those council members. We are awaiting 3 more. As soon as we receive them here in council chambers, we will begin the meeting. If we can't constitute a quorum, we will cancel the meeting for lack of a quorum. Thank you. one more council member. Thank you to council members Alarcon, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Perry, Smith, Weiss, and Zine. Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Wesson, we are waiting one of you to begin the meeting. Again, that's Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Rosendahl, and Mr. Wesson. Please join us as soon as possible so we can begin the meeting. Thank you very much. We have a quorum, so Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruhl, Hahn, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Perry moves, Mr. Weezer seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Labange moves, and Ms. Hahn seconds. Without objection, that will be approved as well. If we can run through the agenda.
On the regular agenda, items 1 through 5 are items noticed for public hearings, and the recommendation for council action is to open the hearing and continue the hearing in order to June 4th. And I believe there's a card on item number 1, if you wish to call that one special.
We'll call one special and the others without objection. We'll go ahead and continue the hearing and the ordinance, or open the hearing and continue the ordinance till the 4th of June. Next item, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 6 through 22.
6 through 22, Ms. Perry.
Mr.
I'm sorry, Ms. Perry, hold on one second. If I can ask folks to kind of wind down their conversations, please. We're running through the agenda, so
Yeah.
shh. Thank you, Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President. On item 6, I'd like to just reopen the public hearing.
Okay, we'll call 6 special for Ms. Perry to do that. Mr. Alarcon?
I guess I had to call 7 special. I just want to vote no.
Okay, we'll call 7 special. Mr. Alarcon? Okay, any other specials, colleagues? 6 through 22. 6 through 22? Let's go ahead and hold the ordinance. Oh, we do have 12 members, so we're okay. Number 11 for Mr. Labange. And on the remainder, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and please tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. If we can send 15 forthwith. And on item 7, Mr. Alarcon, we'll take that up separately right now. Nobody wants to discuss that. We'll have a special. If we can please open the roll on 7. Close the roll. Oh, wait, hold on. Try that again. It didn't record. Let's open the roll, Mr. Alarcon. There we go. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, and was that the first reading?
Yes, that was.
Okay, that'll go to a second reading next week. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held, items 23 through 30. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, and we have cards on items 25, 26, and 27. So we'll call those special. Other specials, colleagues? This is items 23 through 30. 23.
And Mr. President,
Yep.
item number 23 should be taken up after the closed session item 32. So if
Okay,
you wish
let's
to
link
call
that
it special.
together and call that special. Any other specials, colleagues? Okay, the 29, we're waiting for the substitute motion to be distributed, so we'll hold that on the table. Let's go ahead and open and close the other public hearings, and if we can go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote on the balance.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. 14 forthwith without objection. 15 also, please, without objection. And next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 31. That's the closed session. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yes, please. Let's hold that on the desk. And if we can
it's-
call the roll on the special meeting, it just looks like it's just past the hour. 1 more minute? Our trusty city attorney says we're counting down the seconds. It's just a matter of time. And, all right, it is now 15 after. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll for the special meeting.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Wilson, L. Smith, Weiss, West, and Stein Garcetti. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business, please.
This is, I believe, a one-item agenda, and this is an item for which public hearing has not been held.
Okay. And let's see,
And
we
I
do have cards on that.
I
So
believe there is a card on it.
okay, let's call that special, and let's continue that into the regular meeting and adjourn the special meeting. Okay. That takes us to general public comment.
Yes.
And like to have Zuma Dog come forward. Came at 9:40 a.m. according to this card. So, Mr. Dog, are you around? After that, Matt Dowd at 9:42 will be next.
Yes, thank you. People think I just magically twinkle my nose like Bewitched and pop up here every morning. It's not fun. It's not easy. But I'm here to talk today about something very, very, very triumphant, and that's the fact if you check the daily news. Let me start by saying for the past 2 years, myself, Zuma Dog, and Matt Dowd have been talking about special event fee waivers and the abuse of the nonprofit money that's being bamboozled and drained upon the constituents. Today, the Daily News has put an article out with council member quotes finally addressing the special event fee waivers. And Matt Dowd, stand up, Zuma Dog. I'm taking bows. Matt Dowd's taking bows. Nobody in the city was talking about special event fee waiver abuse 2 years ago when we came in here. And I'd like to thank the person from the city's office here in City Hall who pulled me over by the arm one day and said, Zuma Dog, you come here every day and you're breezing right past the biggest fraud, waste, abuse, bamboozle, the special event fee waivers. And they gave me the Jack Weiss memo that day. What a triumphant day, even though I don't like Jack Weiss at all. As a matter of fact, I despise him like so many other people. However, he did have that.
refrain from personal
Oh,
comments.
that's my opinion of the council member, but I appreciate that, and I've gone as far as I need to. However, that was a very triumphant day. So check the Daily News, even though the newspaper's going down the toilet with this new editor, who I'm not going to like their new slant. They did squeeze one in about special event fee waivers. Thank you. And Miriam and Sharon and Donna. Look what happened after the guy from the city told me, and then Matt, we talked about it for 2 years. Sharon, Miriam, Donna, thank you so much. It's in the Daily News today. And I'd also like to say that Neighborhood Council is under attack from the mayor. He runs his own candidates and overtakes the board, and then they do everything they want to do. It's a complete racket. And I'd say you need to look at Jose Aguilar and Hugo Pacheco in CD14. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Dowd is our next speaker. After that, we'll go to Rick Nightingale out in the San Fernando Valley. Good morning.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, Los Angeles, Channel 35. I'll take my bow too, but that's the first time I've ever seen Jack Weiss smile, and someone said they despise him. So I'm trying to figure out how that guy works. He's going to be the city attorney, so just remember, be super mean, and he'll be happy all day. I've got to say, I'm not happy with the performance of the city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo, except for the one thing. It's on the agenda today, and so I'm not allowed to mention it. I want to say, if you're not happy with the performance of the councilman for CD14, possibly Jose Aguilar might be able to make some kind of progress on the neighborhood council and get to the councilman and make some of those needed changes that you need in CD14. Some people think that's just a free show, the Zuma Dog, Matt Dowd. They think it's just a show that Channel 35 puts on, but it's actually serious business. Venice Beach, I haven't really talked about that much yet, but I'll mention it right now. There was problems yesterday on the first day of the zone lottery. It's the new thing, and guess what? There were problems because the director of Parks and Rec, Victor, He's getting it wrong, straight off the rules, and I've got it on camera. It's on YouTube, Deep South 81. There's drama already. The law's not being applied as it's written. So yeah, that's a great video on YouTube. You can look up all our other ones. Some of them feature Janice Hahn, us having hot dogs with the Fill the Boot Fire, LAFD, out in the south lawn of City Hall. We're having hot dogs with Janice Hahn. That's another beautiful video. It's worth watching on YouTube. Look up Zoomer Times or Zoomer Dog or LA City Hall or Venice Lottery or Deep South 81. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Our next speaker is Rick Nightingale out in the San Fernando Valley. Good morning, Mr. Nightingale.
Good morning. I'd like to put a label on why do every city and government employee get a percentage? Where did the thing come as percentage, where the average working person, they get $1 an hour or $3 an hour for a 3-year package or whatever, and people don't realize that when you turn around and get a percentage, for instance, even 10% on $100,000, that's $10,000 a year more that you would get, where the average person might get, what, $35 or $40, and you're getting $10,000. It's just unbelievable that you can get that much money on it. And then you turn around, and it's just outrageous. So then everybody thinks that everybody's the good guy because it's a percentage, and it just don't sound that much. And when he puts other people above other people, you know, like I don't want to sound very disrespectful, but it's going to come out that way, that you put the police and the firemen and people like that above everybody else, that the job that they do, that it's better than anybody else. I was in the same category. I wanted to be a fireman, but that was during the 70s, and it was during the, it was a minority type thing that I didn't get hired, even though I was in the 10% passing. But then you turn around, I am that way. It's called, people are like they're thrill seekers, and I am a thrill seeker. I drag boats, I race cars and things like that, and they would take the job even if it was because of the excitement. People are that way, and I'll admit I am that way. I wanted to be a fireman so bad, but it didn't happen. So I became an electrician. I turned around, I made a good living, but every money that we paid
I'm not
for
sure how this
pension,
is related to the city's jurisdiction, Mr. President.
Thank you. If we could try to limit to what the city has direct
public
jurisdiction over.
comment, and it's regarding the way you spend the money, regarding the percentage of what you pay. It's ridiculous that how did you get paid a percent? Where did the percentage come more than what the average person makes on an hourly basis? That's where it comes out.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Nightingale. Appreciate that explanation, and thank you for your public comment. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker here in council chambers. After that will be James Ota.
Good morning, council members. Please start my clock again. I regret having to walk up front here. This really is terrible. We have to sit and listen to you. Anyway, today the Rules Committee will be considering an item on their agenda regarding the Green Line. Maybe the Psychology Committee can consider why Lucy's always pulling the football back from Charlie Brown every time he goes to kick a field goal. It's the same thing. The Green Line has been considered and considered and considered. Bills, the Construction Authority. Maybe what they should consider is why the Downtown Connector, the Crenshaw Corridor, and the East Side Extension are all moving forward, or these in regards to the East Side Extension, are being built without a Construction Authority. Where did the funding come from? How did they get funding to build these without the Construction Authority? What is the agenda that we need to have these construction authorities? Look at what happened with the Gold Line. The Pasadena Gold Line became the Gold Line Construction Authority and the Foothill Construction Authority, and there's still the Pasadena Gold Line Construction Authority. Yet when you speak to the MTA, the Board of Supervisors who sit on the MTA board, they were voted for. Isn't that redundant? What is the necessity for a Green Line Construction Authority? The LAC MTA is looking to Homeland Security to get funding for gating. Why can't you look for alternative funding for the Green Line? Why is a construction authority necessary? It's only been 20 years since the planning of the Green Line, and it's going to be another 15 years before anything is done. And LAWA is spending $8 billion on the airport, and none of it is for transportation. Thank you for your time, your answers, and your attention.
Mr. Rosendahl for a brief response.
Yeah, just a quick response about the Green Line, folks. The bottom line is this. It's a mile and a half from LAX. We want to put 2 stops and put it into LAX as we spend the $5 to $7 billion in modernizing it. It all needs to be done together. At Aviation and Century, we'll have a stop where all the other light rails can go. It's a joke that it is not into the airport now. We look forward to it going into the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. James Ota is our next speaker. After that, we'll go back to the Valley for Miriam Fogler. Good morning, Mr. Ota.
Morning, President Garcetti and members of the City Council. My name is James Ota, Ota Trucking, and with the Harbor Truckers for a Sustainable Future. The Port of Los Angeles Commissioners on the Clean Air Act plan for the harbor is going to bring their proposed plan on the union and employee status sometime soon. CAMP is nothing more than unionizing all the harbor trucking companies and replacing all the independent truckers. How is this supposed to clean the clean, dirty air that the mayor and some of the city council members want in the harbor? Cleaning the air and replacing all the harbor trucks by 2012, everyone is for, but replacing all the independent truckers and making them become union. What happened to free enterprise? The ports want LNGs to replace half the diesel trucks in the harbor and giving them 50% of the bond money. LNG trucks cost twice as much as diesel. If you're going to replace some, make it 25%. Besides, LNG trucks create more NOx emission than the diesels. The balance would be the diesel trucks. You have many oil companies that produce diesel, but you only have one LNG company. Where's the price competition for the LNG? Where's the competition for the union trucking companies and the LNG? Clean the air without union drivers and concession. Take a good look at the LNG competition and where are they? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miriam Fogler is our next speaker, out in Van Nuys. Good morning, Ms. Fogler.
Yeah, good morning. The headline, well, I'm going to speak on that on special events, but that's just really going to now make you guys look. You need to be scrutinized with your salaries and your incumbency term limits. And that's the very reason why we need it now, need to change these. And secondly, this fine gentleman, Rick Nightingale, he was not on really on, to me, what we need is to have all the people working the same pay, same amount, same pay. Like the electricians are making a lot less in the city, should be making what the water and power is making, because this is the reason why the city has to keep giving the raises to the city workers, because the DWP keeps getting raises. So if we can go by the COLAs every single year, that's the best bet to keep up with the cost of living. These people are good, hard-working folks, and as a matter of fact, my husband, he's a hard-working person. He came to me and told me that his electrician distribution mechanic is leaving as of probably very soon. He went and did an interview with Water and Power, and they're leaving jobs openings for electrician engineers over at the sewage plants. So how do you expect to keep your personnel if they keep moving up to the people who are making more money? I think if it was equal money, then we wouldn't have this problem with the salary discrepancies. But that's not the main problem. The main problem is high pay that the city council and on up is getting. $220,000 you're trying to get to Marcus Allen. He said that he's not going to get $70,000, but I hope he doesn't. But these high salaries, the highest making $304, this is outrageous, way out of line. These salaries have got to come down. And if you just, you need to get rid of the CRA and to stop these fee waivers, and I think then the city will be able to balance its books.
Thank you, Ms. Fogler. Our last speaker is Sharon Brewer, also in the San Fernando Valley. Good morning, Ms. Brewer. Don't worry, we'll start the clock, don't worry.
A little more warning on there. Thank you. Sharon Brewer, public comment. Today's Daily News front page, fee waivers for events, a costly giveaway. City officials all agree reforms needed, but will it happen now? In the history of LA City, bureaucracy special event fee waivers might be the most talked about budget reform that has never been acted on. Last year, 2006-07, LA spent $11.1 million staffing special events that did not have to pay city fees. LA facing a record $406 million budget deficit. The mayor says the city can no longer afford to foot the bill. In my budget proposal, I'm saying hold it, the mayor said. In fairness, I was a council member and I know the pressure you get to do these events. We're going to have to pare down. Mayor, with regards to the special event fee waivers, your only response should be no more special event fee waivers. All fee waivers must stop immediately. Saying no more fee waivers takes the pressure off of the council members to have to pick which event gets a waiver and which one doesn't. The article also says that several council members say that without a formal policy, they are hesitant to reject or challenge waivers requested by colleagues on behalf of for-profit groups and events. When you say no, there is a backlash, said Councilman Weezer. Council members, let's see front page headline in Daily News. 15 council members agree to stop all special event fee waivers immediately for the good of the city. City council members just say no, just like they had the saying for drugs, or just say no. Again, stop the fee waivers, pressure's taken off of the council members, and just a little history. Back in 2002, the city waived for the Lakers back-to-back event $1.1 million. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will close our general public comment for today. If we can go to the first item called special, please.
First item, Mr. President, is item number 1, and that was called special for a card.
Okay. Item number 1, we have card. Matt Dowd, if you'd like to come forward on number 1, please.
Yeah, thank you, Channel 35, Matt Dowd. Maybe I'll get my close-up now because I helped you out with the audio. But I just want to explain to the people watching that these are lighting improvements, and you have the right to protest if you don't want to pay these assessments. And they do have a public hearing, and obviously if no one shows up, then we're going to just kick this through today. And obviously if you protest and you don't want the lighting improvement, then your lighting will probably deteriorate and you'll end up in the darkness. So they've probably got you over the barrel on these. That's why nobody shows up to talk about them, because they know they end up with nothing if they don't pay the money. But we're in a fiscal emergency, and I hope the mayor's listening. But I'm going to recommend that we kick these through and improve this lighting district and move forward into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowd. Like the other items, we will continue that till the 4th of June and keep that public hearing open for members of the public to comment on. If we can go back to general public comment, there was one card that I missed. And Langanji Chase Siame, if you'd like to come forward, my apologies, for general public comment. And good morning to you.
Yeah, they missed me. Policy reform and old government. For every society in existence throughout the world, politics is an integral part of the way that society should be governed. It may be a democratic, autocratic, or indeed a dictatorship style of government. To quickly cover the spectrum, whichever nation that we are making reference to, politics is the machinery that runs society. In the past 4 decades, it appears that our style of politics has been with politicians who are continuously compromised for personal gain. Long-standing politicians have been allowed to stay in Congress for extended periods of time in order to serve the needs of special interest groups, while at the same time perpetuating old policies. We need a new method to protect our politicians so that our political affairs are not easily sabotaged. Furthermore, together with this new security additive, we need political reform to change any unfair policies that we currently have. So far, our policies have been designed to marginalize and further subjugate certain individuals in society, including myself, creating a condition descriptive of the current social injustice of today. I was not allowed to progress in this world because of these policies. I was not allowed to own property because of these policies. I was not even allowed to successfully complete my higher education because of these policies. My policies, which serve my interests, were viciously attacked and usurped by power holders and special interest groups who used senators in Congress to make these unfavorable changes without my knowledge. I am not happy about this occurrence, and I want my own policies which work for me to be reinstated for my personal gratification. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your public comments today. If we can go back to the next item called special.
The next item is item number 6, and that was called special by Councilmember Perry.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I had asked for the public comment to be reopened. And while that is occurring, perhaps the city attorneys and Commander Smith can come to the center table to be ready for questions. And then after public comment, I'd like to make a few comments.
Okay, we have 12 cards so far on this. Do you want to propose a time on both sides?
Give them each person 1 minute each.
1 minute each, okay.
Yeah.
We will try to do from both sides.
Let me need extra chairs.
And Mr. Dog, are you for, against, or just general? Okay. If we'd start then with the against side, James Lott is our first speaker, and then Carol Meyer will be our second. If you'd like to come forward, we'll take our general public comment on this.
Good morning, council members. My name is James Lott, and I represent the hospital industry, which has the pleasure of serving the residents of the city of Los Angeles. Let me be real clear about this. Federal law, well, let me back up. If you pass this ordinance as is written, it will be hazardous to the health and sustainability of the emergency medical services system serving the city of Los Angeles. Federal law is very clear on this point. The Office of the Inspector General for the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid has no choice. It's very clear. He must suspend any healthcare provider, individual or institution, that commits or is found guilty of having committed a misdemeanor offense. He has no choice. That provider will be suspended for 5 years. Medicare and Medicaid payments are the lifeblood of all of our hospitals here in the city of Los Angeles, in the state of California. So if you don't have a problem shutting down our hospitals because of this, then go ahead and adopt this.
Thank you. Carol Meyer?
My name is Carol Meyer. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the LA County Department of Health Services, and I'm the former Director of Emergency Medical Services Agency, which is the agency responsible for coordination of all of the EMS providers in LA County, which included your own LA City Fire Department. I worked very closely over the years, particularly the last 5 years, redirecting ambulances to hospitals because of the closure of 10 hospitals in Los Angeles County. The LA County Department of Health Services and the EMS agency opposes an ordinance that allowing LA City to regulate the transport of discharged hospital patients. This ordinance is modeled after county-opposed SB 275, which was vetoed by the governor last year. We have serious concern about an ordinance that would subject hospitals to the possibility of the criminal sanctions that were just relayed to you by Mr. Lott. We feel that the appropriate levels of deterrence can be achieved without resorting to criminal sanctions. Effective in 2007, the Department of Health Services was given the authority to impose substantial fines.
I'm sorry, ma'am. We just have a minute per speaker. That's what the clock's for, so I'm sorry. We're going to have to cut off the comments there. If you have any further things you'd like to submit.
Oppose to this or veto on this ordinance, and I have handouts here.
Yeah, if you'd like to hand to the Sergeant at Arms, we'd be happy to take any further writing you have on that. Veronica Perez-Becker is next, and then we'll go to the fourth side.
Good morning, Veronica Perez-Becker, CCA. We agree that hospitals should be held accountable for proper patient discharge, but we have concerns about this ordinance. First, criminally charging hospitals does not get to the root of the problem, which is that many discharged patients have nowhere to go. Second, criminal charges threaten a hospital's eligibility for Medicare or Medi-Cal funding, which could cause even more hospitals in our bed-starved region to close. This outcome not only penalizes the hospitals, but it unfairly penalizes the community. Indeed, 10 hospital emergency rooms serving LA County have closed over the last 5 years. The remaining emergency rooms must often turn away patients due to overcrowded conditions. We must remember these hospitals are the medical safety net for the county's 3 million uninsured residents, providing almost $2 billion of unpaid medical care annually. This is not to say the hospitals should not be held accountable. They should. But instead of criminalizing them, we should be working with them to come up with comprehensive, workable solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From the For side, Kathy Cardet is our next speaker. Kardec, sorry. And then Tara Devine.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's Kathy Carter, RN.
Oh, gotcha, Carter.
I'd like to
Sorry.
say, President and City Council members, on behalf of the 80,000 registered nurses of the California Nurses Association, I wholeheartedly support your endeavors to make patient dumping in the city of Los Angeles a crime. Registered nurses in California have the obligation and the right to advocate in the best interest of our patient, and no patient should be harmed by their discharge from the hospital. This legislation will not solve the problem of homelessness. Nobody ever claimed it would. It does not create a legal requirement for any hospital to transport any patient anywhere after discharge. What this ordinance requires is that if a hospital chooses to transport a patient, then that hospital must get that patient's consent before taking them anywhere other than their home. That's it, just consent. That's why the argument that this ordinance will shut down hospitals is untrue. The misdemeanor penalty is important because dumping continues.
We can ask you to wrap up right there.
Pardon?
We can ask you to wrap up there. If you want to
Okay.
finish, you can finish that sentence. Go ahead.
Okay. Just on Skid Row in the last year, the Los Angeles Police Department reported more than 50 documented cases of patient dumping.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Tara Devine is next, and then Anna Levine.
Good morning, council members. My name is Tara Devine. I am the Director of Business and Government Affairs for the Central City East Association, which represents 110 blocks through 3 business improvement districts on the east side of downtown Los Angeles, including the majority of the 50-block area known as Skid Row. Our bid security personnel, or red shirts as they are better known in Skid Row, are often the first responders to the tragedies that occur on the sidewalks of Los Angeles every day. We discover overdoses, we discover corpses, we discover the mentally ill person wandering in traffic, we discover the man on the sidewalk, still in a wheelchair, in a hospital gown, bleeding actively from a wound. These are all actual incidents we've encountered. We see the pained faces of devastated people who are searching for their relatives lost in Skid Row, people who have been taken there against their will, without their consent or understanding. It is tragedy enough when someone chooses to sleep on the streets of Skid Row. It is incomprehensible that they should be left there. We have tremendous respect for the Hospital Association, but we believe that the criminal charges are necessary to stop the tide of cases of patient dumping, which have continued unabated.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Levine, excuse me. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Anna Levine, and I'm a staff attorney at Protection and Advocacy. We're a nonprofit advocacy organization mandated to advance the human and legal rights of people with disabilities. I personally represent people with mental health and developmental disabilities, many of whom are homeless, unfortunately. This ordinance tackles a very narrow portion of the much larger problem of discharge from hospitals to the streets of people who do not wish to be in the streets and whose continuing medical needs make discharge to the streets inappropriate. PAI supports this measure as it recognizes patient choice, and it defends the right of a homeless individual to define and return the place he or she considers home, even if that means the street. At the same time, it provides a clear mechanism for holding a hospital accountable when it discharges a patient out the door of a hospital far from home or transports the patient to the door of a Skid Row shelter, notwithstanding the patient's protest that the shelter is not in the area he or she considers home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. We'll go to general comments now. Zuma Dog. After that, David Hernandez.
Thank you, Councilmember Perry, for reopening this for public comment. Very important issue in the city, especially for downtown. What this will do is a $25,000 fine for hospitals if they are dumping patients, primarily Skid Row downtown, against the patient's will. Now, 2 years ago, when I first came into these chambers and started to blog about Venice Beach, somebody, Jose Aguilar, who I say is running for neighborhood council president, contacted me and said, Zuma Dog, when everybody was trying to crack down on the Skid Row 2 years ago, when they got the one wedge in that way, this is a big problem with the hospitals dumping the patients downtown. It's Skid Row. And if you want to crack down on Skid Row, it's impossible because they keep redumping them. Now, the problem is a lot of these are mentally ill patients, and what happens, they get dumped downtown and they can't even speak for themselves, and they try to tell a police officer what happens, or if they're asked what happens, so they know that these people are contained in their own mental illness and they're not able to say it. So I don't know what the answer is, but we need a crackdown. This may allow the police, if I can just say one final thing, although it's harsh, this might allow the police to at least get a wedge in to enforce it if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. David Hernandez is our next speaker. After that will be Matt Dowd.
Good morning, council members. This council has proven to be extremely compassionate and dedicated to the homeless issue in Los Angeles. I mean, that goes without question. When we look at the past 10 years, the amount of public funding going through LAHSA almost being $1 billion, the taxpayers and this city council has really put their money where it should go. Today, I'm here speaking to you as the chairman of Justiceville USA, which for 14 years had Dome Village here in Los Angeles. We all want the same thing. We all want humane treatment for the homeless. However, this ordinance and its unintended consequences failed to address the real issue. And the real issue, and why this should be returned to committee, is to allow organizations like ours and Valley Rescue Mission to submit a proposal for a triage-type program so that these patients can be taken to from the hospital and then on to other established programs.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll close
Appreciate the
with,
comment.
when we closed our Dome Village last year, we placed more than 85% of those homeless into long-term permanent housing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your comments. Libby Boyce is our next speaker on the against side, and then we'll go to the that's the last speaker on the, Matt Dowd, and then Libby Boyce. Go ahead, Mr. Dowd. I'm sorry, Ms. Boyce, Mr. Dowd, I'd called earlier. You'll be right on deck if you'll stand right there. Thanks.
Thank you, yes, and...
were you for or against, or is it just general comments? It wasn't marked. So
general comments. Tending to be against even. I'd love to be able to talk to these guys face to face too, if we can have them turn around a little for the public comment. It's always nice to, just eyeball to eyeball so that you know you're hearing, because sometimes you can get distracted if you're not listening to the comment.
Your comments, please.
The problem is we always end up when criminalizing people. Is that the only solution to all the problems in this city? Because to me, they tried that with us out of Venice. A lot of captains have been moved, and a lot of people had problems on their records after people sued, and they made all these complaints, and it doesn't look good because criminalizing people, we're criminalizing the hospital system now. I wanted to be for this. I want to clean up this problem, but why do we always end up with criminalizing the hospital system that we need to help these people?
Thank you. Libby Boyce, my apologies, is our next speaker. After that will be Reverend Andy Bales from the Foreside.
Good morning. My name is Libby Boyce. I'm the Homeless Services Coordinator for LA County Department of Health Services. We serve about 400 homeless in our acute care facilities throughout LA in 1 month's period. In March 2006, I received a call from Andy Bales Union Rescue Mission with the name of 26 individuals who were allegedly dumped from our hospitals. I did a thorough investigation of those. 11 off the top were described as being medically stable and wanting to go to Union Rescue Mission. So Andy did say that those should not be included, which left me with 15. After investigating those 15, they either came from Union Rescue Mission, that was their address, or they requested to go to Skid Row, to a shelter in Skid Row. Thank you very much. I want to say, on behalf of LA County Department of Health Services, I request a no vote on this proposed ordinance.
Reverend Andy Bales, our next speaker on the Foreside. After that will be Silvio Lozano.
Thank you, honorable city council members. About 4 years ago, we had a patient dropped off from County Hospital with an IV in her arm, and she had pneumonia, and 10 minutes later she died in our guest area. And that's why we set up the hospital dump cams in front of our mission to document the hospital drop-offs that followed. Since that time, we've had a woman dropped off from 20 miles away who had never been on Skid Row, suffering from dementia, a fever, high blood pressure, left on our doorstep, with a hospital gown and a diaper, and left to fend for herself on Skid Row. Fortunately, I was out front. I found her. I called Captain Andy Smith. And since that time, the hundreds of hospital drop-offs have been documented. And I'm thankful for the city attorney, for the police, for taking great action, for the media, describing it so thoroughly. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had a man driven 42 miles, a confused man with mental health issues, driven 42 miles, dropped off a block away so as not to be seen by our camera. And after we finally found his family and reunited him with his family, they had instructed the hospitals to call them when he was released. But instead, he was dumped on the mean streets of Skid Row. Please pass this ordinance. Help us to live up to the title of the City of Angels. Thank you.
Sylvia Lozano is our next speaker. After that is Greg Smith. Not this Greg Smith, but another Greg Smith. There's more than one of you. Sorry, Mr. Smith. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Lozano, and I work at New Image Emergency Shelter, and I've been there 14 years. My concerns with the dumping of the patients, I see it. They brought in patients. The hospital called and asked to bring a patient. They will not state to us their condition. So when they get to the shelter, a lot of them are not suitable to be there because they need more care. We've had gentlemen coming with 2 broken legs. I had a female who had staples, like 42 staples. She was left outside the gate before we even opened. They say patient consent, they get it, they get the consent from the patient, but they're not explaining to the patient where they're sending them to. Once they get to the shelter, they were told they were going to go to a hospital where they're going to have their own rooms and their own beds, and that's not true. A lot of patients are being dumped off around the corner from the shelters. I've had people with oxygen tanks waiting outside, females in wheelchairs. We've had, it's just been increasing. We get a lot more help now, but there's a lot of concern for the clients that are being dumped off from the hospital.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Ms. Lozano. Greg Smith. And after that is Brenda Wilson.
Good morning, council members. There's more than one of us. My name is Greg Smith. I'm a staff attorney at the Public Counsel Law Center, which is a nonprofit legal provider in Los Angeles. We've been working very closely with the city attorney for several years on this issue. And although there has been some hospitals that have come to the table and made some tremendous changes to sort of hit this horrendous practice, this has not ended. This is an ongoing issue that we're continuing to look into. We're in support of this ordinance, particular the aspects of informed consent for clients. Like was said before, there are hospitals that are driving former patients 40-plus miles to the downtown area, the Skid Row district, who have never been there, who are unfamiliar with the circumstances and are put in danger. And we're just formally supporting this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda Wilson.
There's a card coming for my program administrator, Jim Ebert, but we've agreed with it just being a minute. If we could, if I could speak for him as well.
Please go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but the clock has started.
All right, we'll start at a minute.
Okay. But good morning, council members. And let me just share with you, having been a hospital administrator for 15 years prior to coming into the field of providing services to homeless populations, and as you know, New Image has been around almost 20 years providing this service and being one of the largest in this state, in this city, we are seeing more and more clients dumped off, which is very disturbing to me. In this last year alone, we've seen more than 20. And I have personally, because my staff knows, if anyone comes in through the night, you call me. I have personally been woke up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and Attorney Turner has said, call me whenever. So he's been woke up too, because I call him. But my biggest concern is that this has got to stop. It's been increasingly more and more occurrences. And out of the more than 20, I'd say about 10 of them should have never. I mean, the other ones we try to keep and work with, but a lot of them are just dumped, as my administrator said, dumped at the gate, dumped around the corner. If this ordinance is not passed, I'm doing his minute, if this ordinance is not passed, then it's just going to get increasingly worse.
Thank you very
And
much, Ms.
the
Wilson.
awareness has got to be there.
Thank you.
It should
James
be
Ebert, I'm
a
sorry,
crime.
we got to stick to a minute. We
But-
went a little bit over.
but it was 1 minute.
We started over. It's just 1 minute per speaker. So
I know, but I was doing his.
sorry. No,
He's not
we
speaking.
can't transfer minutes between people. I'm sorry. We can hear from Mr. Ebert, but we can't transfer time back and forth.
Please, these are people.
Okay, and I just want to tag along or dovetail on what our President CEO Brenda Wilson is speaking about, and that this is an issue that is most felt and impacted by the shelters and the homeless community. We're the ones that are aware of this issue. We're the ones that experience this issue. It is our voice that's in front of you today that's telling you this is a major concern with everybody that provides services in the community. There's numerous 911 calls. The dumping occurs throughout the night, so it's hard to get a hold of who to get a hold of to put this together, and we end up being the person that is responsible for their medical conditions, and we are not a skilled agency. It should be a crime for letting people. For putting people in the shelters, not because they're homeless, but because there should be a crime for dumping homeless people into shelters, not because they're homeless, but because they're human beings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please pass
Appreciate it.
this ordinance.
That'll close our reopened public hearing on this. Would like to recognize first Ms. Perry, and then Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Smith, the other Mr. Smith, and Mr. Alarcon.
Thanks, Mr. President. And after I'm done making my comments, I want to ask the city attorneys and Commander Smith to respond directly to the comments made by Mr. Lott on behalf of the Hospital Association and the reality of what he says. For over 2 years, the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee has worked to address the issues of homelessness here in the city. Homeless people come to us from throughout Los Angeles County. Many are sent to our city without the power to say no. We already know that the way to stop the revolving door for people in and out of jail and hospitals is permanent supportive housing. And while I am doing great numbers in my own council district, we know that housing is not being built nearly everywhere else in Los Angeles County. Since 2001, I have witnessed the phenomenon known as homeless patient dumping in my own council district in downtown Los Angeles. As recently as 4 months ago, when we were taking a walk in front of the Midnight Mission gathering, and the city attorney was there, I witnessed firsthand a man being dumped out of a cab. I ran up to him and said, he was in his hospital gown with a wristband on, he had tubes coming out of his stomach, and I said, "Where are you coming from?" He said, "County USC." I said, "What happened to you?" And he said, "Well, I had been stabbed." And I said, "Do you know why you're here?" And he did not appear to know why he was here. He appeared to be disoriented. And immediately had to receive assistance from the Midnight Mission and the staff there to try to get him back into a medical situation, because he clearly, with tubes coming out of his stomach in a hospital gown with no underwear on, had no reason at all to be on the street dumped like that. Now, I witnessed that firsthand, immediately ran to the city attorney and said, "I can't believe it. They actually dumped somebody out in front of us." That was with myself standing there, police officers from Central Division standing there, dumped in broad daylight. So, if anybody thinks this is a fantasy or we're making this up, they're really off base. Patients are brought here by taxi, by ambulance, by law enforcement from other jurisdictions, and I think Commander Smith can speak to that. Some with IVs and wheelchairs. Many people are mentally ill, confused, suffer from dementia and multiple health-related problems, and they are sent to Skid Row. And while we do have the greatest number of service providers, more than 10 in the western states combined, they are overwhelmed, and the shelters are overwhelmed. We, as a city, cannot be the primary solution to the region's homeless problem. In fact, I believe we're going to have a significant impact on chronic homelessness because of the large number of supportive housing buildings that we built and we're currently building, but we're still seeing an increase in homelessness among the elderly. It has reached crisis proportions, and as the Reverend mentioned, Carolyn Reyes, and that we were just lucky that time that she got caught on tape. Okay, we were lucky that time. She had pneumonia and dementia, and she was re-hospitalized and spent really nearly 1 month in care before she was appropriately placed in supportive housing. She's just one of the many dumping cases that we could talk to you about. And I asked some of you to think about some of your relatives that they were placed in a condition where they were sent without informed consent to a place like Skid Row. I've met many of these patients. As I said, I've witnessed dumping firsthand. I've listened to the stories. We do have respite care beds in Skid Row, but there's simply not enough of them for this region. In 2006, you voted with me to support SB 275 that would prohibit a general acute care hospital, acute psychiatric hospital, or special hospital from causing a patient to be transported without informed consent. And it passed, and then the governor vetoed it in October 2007. It's a testament to the power of the lobbyists on behalf of the hospital in Sacramento. I hope such is not the case here. The practice of patient dumping continues to this day. Our committee has worked with the city attorney to address this issue. I want to go on record to state very clearly that unless the city stands up and demands that homeless be treated in a humane way and forces issues like homeless dumping to be addressed in a manner that is action-oriented, nothing will change and dumping will continue. I have asked for assistance from the County of Los Angeles for years, several years, to address the health and mental health related issues having to do with homelessness. Not to my surprise, even though leadership in the county has identified funds for homeless-related services, the real political will to address the issues is not there. Huge sums of homeless dollars are left on the table at the county level, waiting for the absolutely right project in the absolute right location that ultimately may not get built. This year, Los Angeles County has nearly $20 million in unspent revenue for homeless services. Their response to the homeless crisis has been slow, nearly non-existent since 2005. And we have a county which has the distinction of being the homeless capital of this country. Our partners in the trenches must help, and our hospitals must help. Kaiser Permanente has agreed to support this ordinance. If Kaiser can do it, I don't see why other hospitals can't do it too. I believe that they can discharge homeless patients with the same level of attention and care that all patients receive and are required under state law. It's right, it's humane, and it's time to change this practice that has gone on long in this region. This ordinance will require our hospitals to get informed written consent from a patient prior to hospital discharge. Failure to do so could, and I emphasize could, I know the apocalyptic words that were used in the beginning by the hospital lobbyists and their representatives, but the operative word here is could. It gives us a few more teeth to be able to cause hospitals to be accountable to people who are mentally ill. Could result in misdemeanor charges being filed by the city of Los Angeles. I'm sorry, Mr.
Okay, we're over 6 minutes. Do you want to press your button again to speak a little bit, or?
Yeah, sure. I'll press it again and speak a little bit. Yeah,
Thank you.
That'll be fine. Yeah, yeah.
That's model behavior from our
Yeah, okay, that's model
Assistant
behavior. Yes, I
President
will press my button again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas for 3 minutes is next, then Mr. Smith, Mr. Alico, and Mr. Labanz, and we'll come back to Ms. Perry to close.
How many cases have we formally encountered in the city of Los Angeles recently? Do we have any number for the last year, 3 years, 5 years?
Jeffrey Isaacs, Chief of the Criminal and Special Litigation Branch. Good morning, Council Member. The City Attorney's Office formally opened an investigation into homeless patient dumping about 2 years ago. During that period, we have opened investigations on now 60-plus cases, and that means that it was a credible report. Because of the difficulty in prosecuting under existing law, we have filed 3 cases, civil cases, and one of those was settled involving Kaiser. That was also filed as a criminal case, and 2 cases, one involving Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital and the dumping of a paraplegic gentleman in the gutter outside Gladys Park. That's pending, and another case involving Methodist Hospital of Arcadia is pending. We also have a number of open investigations that may or may not result in the filing of criminal charges or civil actions.
Now, when we have cases here in the city of Los Angeles, do we refer them to the state or any other jurisdiction?
No other jurisdiction has indicated any interest in taking action. In the case of Mr. Olvera, the paraplegic man, we actually did refer that case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution, and they believed, given the difficulty of prosecuting under existing law, that it was not suitable for criminal prosecution, and that's why we're proceeding on that case as a civil action.
Okay. Now, if a patient is in a hospital and the hospital deems that person fit to be discharged, where does it lie on a legal discharge if the person says, I don't want to go, I don't want to leave, I want to stay here?
Well, first off, we haven't we haven't encountered that situation, but there are that's something that would have to be addressed by the hospital administration if they are suitable for discharge. But there's a problem because of their mental condition. That can be addressed through appointment of a guardian or somebody as their representative. At some point, I imagine, and I'm not in a position to give a legal opinion on this, but at some point that could be trespassing. But that has not been the problem that we've encountered in the dumping cases.
What's the problem that we're trying to address with this ordinance?
The problem is simply that when a hospital, what we're trying to address is the horrible and unconscionable practice of homeless patient dumping, which is a situation where a hospital does not want to treat a homeless person, doesn't want that person coming back to the hospital, and chooses to transport that person not to the residence, and the ordinance specifically defines residence for purposes of a homeless person, but just to take them away. And that's why these people end up on Skid Row. In some cases, as Andy Bales mentioned, being transported 20, 30, 40 miles in a recent case that was reported in the press last week, more than 40 miles from Orange County to a location that's very dangerous, that they have no prior experience with and no hope of returning from to where they previously resided or was their area, and so they won't be a problem to that hospital. And it's interesting because in some cases, some of the people that have been dumped, actually had insurance, or not insurance, but were entitled to benefits. So it's not necessarily all about the money either. It's, I think, about just not wanting to treat these people and deal with them.
You said something kind of interesting. You said homeless patient dumping and discharging them to their home or their residence. I thought a homeless person, part of calling them homeless was the fact that they didn't have a place to live.
That is correct, and that we've addressed that in the ordinance with a specific definition for what a patient's residence is in the case of a homeless person. And that is, what we're trying to do is avoid the problem where somebody is being taken somewhere where they don't want to go or without their written consent, and dealing, as I think everybody recognizes, with a population of patients that may suffer from mental impairment. And that's why when we developed the protocols with Kaiser, which Kaiser has abided by, we took that into account. And by the way, in the Kaiser settlement, we have a former district court judge and U.S. attorney monitoring the injunction in that case. They've provided training to their staff. There's statistical information compiled. And with those protocols in place and with that training, Kaiser in all their many facilities throughout the county and the region have not had any problems and has not presented any problems with dumping patients. And as Councilmember Perry said, they are supportive of this ordinance. So it's something that hospitals can do, and we've tried to give them guidance into how to deal with this difficult situation, working with experts to develop these protocols. And we believe that this ordinance will serve to encourage them to adopt the protocols, provide the appropriate training, and eliminate this problem once and for all, which has been going on for decades.
So will this ordinance eliminate the problem?
I can't guarantee that, but I think it will go a long way to doing that, and it will give the hospitals something which they do not currently have under present law, which is clear guidance as to what they cannot do. It's a very simple ordinance. It states a simple rule that can be easily complied with. And I think it gives them the necessary guidance that they don't currently have as to what they cannot do.
How much dialogue has gone into this ordinance beyond Kaiser? How many hospitals or hospital associations or what have you had input on this document?
We have had very little dialogue with the Hospital Association of Southern California because we clearly are at loggerheads with them. We met with them early on when when the problem first surfaced, and we opened our investigation. We found them non-responsive. We found that they're taking positions that just aren't true, and I'd be happy to address Mr. Lott's claims that this is going to lead to the closure of hospitals. Just not true, false propaganda. But more importantly, after we had a first meeting with them, and made some proposals to them, they came back to us and said, we cannot speak on behalf of our member hospitals, nor can we commit our member hospitals, nor can we legally bind our member hospitals. And then when we started dealing with individual hospitals like Kaiser, they were not necessarily aligned with HASC either. So we have dealt with well over a dozen hospitals, worked closely with Kaiser and other hospitals and experts who we retained and consulted with to develop the protocols that form the basis of the Kaiser settlement. We think they're state-of-the-art, and as I've said, we now have experience, and Kaiser has experience using those, and so far we haven't had any incidents. Any issues that have come up have been dealt with, and I think they work very well, and I think with the encouragement of this ordinance, and with its criminal punishment of a misdemeanor conviction up to a $25,000 fine, and importantly, up to 3 years of probation, that will act as a deterrence to put an end to this practice once and for all.
How do you put a hospital on probation?
It's like an injunction. It's court ordered, just like an individual. Corporation can be ordered to do certain things. For instance, comply with
So I just want to clarify, you're talking about not an individual being on probation, but a hospital being on probation.
The actual organization.
And then they have maybe other sanctions or impacts that they have to follow.
They would have...
Specifically.
They could be ordered to do just like an individual, to comply with certain terms and conditions of probation to avoid this from recurring. But let me make one point very clear. I hope, and the prosecutors with me and Commander Smith hope, that we will never have to prosecute a hospital under this ordinance. We believe it will serve an important deterrent effect and give the adequate notice that is necessary to prevent these hospitals from engaging in this type of conduct. And I hope that we'll never be at a point where we're convicting a hospital of this, but you need that criminal penalty as a deterrent. And if we do get to that point, you need a fine of up to $25,000 and the ability for a Superior Court judge to impose terms and conditions of corporate probation, as you mentioned, not individual, corporate probation on the hospital and its staff if necessary.
Now, if a hospital has a misdemeanor on their record, could that in fact cause them to lose their Medicare or Medi-Cal eligibility as far as reimbursements?
No, not based on our reading of the applicable regulations, which are found in Title 42 of the Code of Federal Regulations at Section 1001.101. We've looked at this, and none of the specific provisions for exclusion would appear to apply to a conviction for violating a local ordinance, a municipal ordinance. They do apply for conviction of a federal or state law or criminal offense, but not for a local ordinance. And I think part of the confusion that has started here is, remember, this started off as a proposed state law, passed the Assembly, passed the Senate, and then was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger. And if it had been passed as a state law, yes, then a conviction would have led to the exclusion, as Mr. Lott said. But because we're now talking about a municipal ordinance, that is not included in the offenses that could lead to exclusion. So I think that there has been some confusion. I can understand why, given the history of this bill. But remember, there is a state law on the books, Health and Safety Code section, I think it's 1264.2, which makes it a crime to transport inter-county, across county lines, and transport patients and dump them across county lines. So the state legislature has seen fit to expose hospitals to potential conviction that could lead to an exclusion. This ordinance, we don't believe, would.
Okay. To Councilmember Perry, I don't know if that's included in the process here, but I'd like to see if they could give a report back to the council in 6 months and in 12 months to see how this is being implemented and what impact we can actually delineate from the activity or hopefully lack of activity. In addition to that, sometime in the next 12 months, I'd like to see them try to convene at least parties who are willing to come to the table who might want to give us some feedback on how they feel they're being impacted, whether it's homeless shelters or hospitals or what have you, so we can get street-level feedback about what they're feeling and seeing as far as how this ordinance is working out in the streets.
And I think we can get feedback even sooner than that, and I'd be willing to support that. And I'm sure, based on their behavior, that Kaiser Permanente would be more than happy to come back and share with us. They've been a tremendous partner and helpmate in embracing this and working with us, and perhaps they can serve as a role model for some of the other hospitals to follow suit.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith is our next speaker. After that is Mr. Alarcon.
Thank you very much. First of all, if Councilwoman Perry says we need this and Commander Smith says we need this, and you'll have my vote. I do have some concerns, and to follow Mr. Carden's exploration, I also had the letter from Supervisor Yvonne Burke saying that the federal government would stop making payments if there was a misdemeanor violation. And so I would ask Ms. Perry if we just put in the file as a separate instruction to the city attorney to write the appropriate federal agencies to get a letter in writing that clarifies that issue. If they come back and say, no, it is a problem, then I think we need to readdress the issue. If they come back and say, you're absolutely right, city attorney, this doesn't affect hospital payments of Medicaid, Medicare, then we're fine. But I want a documentation in the file if we could get that. I appreciate that. Secondly, and Commander, this is really to you as a police officer. My concern is, and to the city attorney, the only concern I really have with this is mental incapacity. The inability of a person to sign a document with the capacity to understand what they were signing. You would know as well as I do that in a hospital discharge situation, people that are mentally incompetent, people that have drug abuse problems, that don't have cognitive abilities, senior citizens that may be disoriented or have dementia, are not really capable of understanding what they're signing. They're going to be pushed a bunch of papers, told sign here, we're going to take you away, and they're going to sign because they don't know any better. So I'm concerned about the clause in here that says they have to sign a document instructing them to be taken to this facility if it's not their residence. If 1/3 of the people on Skid Row are mentally incapable in the first place, how does that ordinance, how does that language have an effect? And how are we protecting them from being still kind of forced into it, not knowing any better, by unscrupulous people who might take advantage of them?
Sir, Commander Andrew Smith, Operation South Bureau. I'll let Jeff Isaacs answer the specifics of that question, but what we see in Skid Row, as you know, are a lot of homeless folks that have a lot of mental problems. And the folks at the Mission, Andy Bales, the Midnight Mission, and the LA Mission, are able to handle people that have mental health issues like that. The big problem arises when someone gets transported and there's no connection made with the Mission. There's no handoff, what the hospitals call a warm handoff, where they have a social worker that, or a caseworker that greets the person at the door and can take that person in. Because Andy Bales and the good folks at the other missions, they deal with people with mental issues all the time, every day, and they're able to handle that. But the problem is when they don't make that connection.
Thank you. Council member, in the protocols that we developed as part of the settlement with Kaiser, we specifically addressed that problem with Kaiser and came up with sort of a flow chart for proper examination and discharge planning to address that. If you have somebody who is severely mentally impaired, it may be appropriate that they be placed at a 5150 hold or that a guardian be appointed. And the county has programs for expedited appointment of guardians and conservators in this type of situation, and a lot of hospitals were actually signed up to this program. They didn't even know it. As to the unscrupulous nature of it, I must say in our cases, it hasn't been the staff. It's really been a policy of hospital management or neglect on hospital management's part to train the staff regarding appropriate discharge procedures, what the law is, and what the options are, and the staff has welcomed that. And I think in the Kaiser case, Kaiser put together a training program that they were willing to share and are willing to share with other hospitals, so they've done the heavy lifting, and we think that'll eliminate a lot of these problems, but we need that deterrent of a potential criminal conviction to get hospital management to move in that direction, to get HASC to move in that direction, and get everybody on board working together. I don't think that the staff of hospitals enjoy or want to just send people who are unfit to be on the street on their own out there and hope they fend for themselves. That has not been our experience, at least.
And I concur that a law will change the attitude of a lot of people. My hope is that are we going to, as we roll this out, we're going to notify people of the protocols established by Kaiser, say this is your option, that if you have a 72-hour MEU hold, here's how you do it. You transfer it from your hospital to the county jurisdiction. Here's the signs you need to look for. All that is in that document.
Yeah, yes, sir, and we've been doing that since we put those protocols in place, but we know we've been to HASC seminars, and they have not been supportive of those protocols, at least in the form that we've proposed, and we think that this type of ordinance will get the ball moving and get more hospitals to sign up. We've done what we can do, but there's clearly something missing. They need some more impetus to do this instead of waiting until they get caught. And of course, we're talking about a very small subset of hospitals that are doing this. And by the way, I should just mention that the county hospitals have really been the hospital of last resort, and they've been terrific in stepping up and taking these people when we've identified them. And so we've had no problem with the county hospital. They have been very helpful and really have provided a place to bring these people who are generally discharged without getting adequate or complete care. So, and Gordon Turner, who I think you know, who works down on Skid Row and investigates a lot of these cases, Deputy City Attorney, could address that further if you have any further questions on that point.
I thank you very much for clarifying those issues. Ms. Perry, you had me at hello, but I just wanted to clarify those issues because there are big concerns that I have that we would be passing an ordinance that just didn't have enough teeth or the right kind of teeth to make it work, and I appreciate it. And Commander Smith, if you say we do it, we do it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Alarcon.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me extend my thanks and appreciation to Councilmember Perry and to the City Attorney's Office for coming back with what I think is a fair approach.
Thank you.
To a very difficult problem. Anybody who intentionally dumps a patient, I have no sympathy for, and they ought to be dumped themselves somewhere where they would feel the discomforts of being dumped, maybe Siberia or something, I don't know. So I appreciate the work that you put into this because it is very difficult to balance all the interests. A misdemeanor there has to be a finding of intent related to a misdemeanor, is that not correct?
No, sir.
Okay.
There does not have to be, and there is not in this ordinance.
Okay.
But that is why we've limited it to its operation to the hospital itself and not the individual. And we are trying to address the conduct
tell
of
me
an organization.
what the facts are that would lead to a conviction.
Again, it's very simple. It sets up a bright line rule of what a hospital cannot do. And it would be a situation, a classic situation of dumping, where a hospital...
Can you hold my time, please?
A classic situation of dumping where the hospital takes somebody who...
Well, the hospital doesn't take them. It's an ambulance will take them.
In some cases, there are van services that are that belong to the hospital, vans that belong to the hospital, contracted out, or some instances, taxi cabs and ambulances.
That's a factual situation.
Right. They have to cause...
Tell me generally, how do you get to the point where there would be a conviction?
The hospital has to cause a person to be transported to some place other than that person's residence, and residence is defined for homeless people as the person's fixed and regular nighttime residence or domicile, or a location that the person gives as his or her principal place of dwelling. And,
so let's say an employee just drops somebody off. Does that meet the standard? Without the hospital knowing about it?
If that person is acting within the course and scope of, if it's a hospital employee acting within the course and scope of that person's duty, and they have not obtained the written consent and they choose to dump somebody, yes, the hospital would be liable for that person's actions. That person may or may not be liable.
Can you meet all the discharge standards that you would like to see and still have somebody dump a patient?
We don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No. If they do proper discharge planning, if they follow the other laws that apply, they should not have any problems.
So all the hospitals would have to do is agree to your discharge policies.
Follow it.
They would essentially be exempt from
and follow it. And we think that they will.
Well, they would have to follow it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the follow that's the big part, because you're talking about people's lives here, and one case could expose the hospital to prosecution if it's an egregious case. I mean, this is only intended to reach those instances where the hospital is truly trying to get rid of the patient. Mm-hmm. And what we found recently, especially as Reverend Bales pointed out, the unscrupulous hospitals have gotten smarter. So now they're not dumping in front of the Union Rescue Mission or Midnight Mission, where we have the dumping cams, down the street, around the corner, in Hollywood, other places that where we have no ability to monitor. And it's frankly becoming increasingly like illegal trash dumping, done under the cover of night or away from any witnesses, and that's what makes it so difficult to investigate and prosecute these cases.
Right now, that's illegal.
Illegal trash dumping, or which, by the way, is a strict liability offense too.
No, patient dumping is illegal.
No, it's not. We have used a variety of different statutes. Maybe we've been accused of stretching them, but we've used statutes like dependent adult endangerment and false imprisonment and unfair competition to try to reach that conduct. And what I'm saying is, it's getting more and more difficult to make that kind of case.
Because they're getting more smart.
Exactly.
And hiring better and better attorneys.
Exactly.
Well, I think that what you are proposing is worth the risk. Whatever the risks are, it is a greater risk to put somebody out on the streets of L.A., particularly in downtown L.A., particularly when they're disoriented and in not the best of health. So I do think we should come back and rethink this in a year, and I think that's a good idea. But the quicker we act takes our responsibility away. To fail to act, I think, contributes to the societal failure that we have in this regard. So again, I want to thank you for bringing this back, and Ms. Berry, of course, for her work on this, but this is good work, and I hope that we will create a more compassionate city of Los Angeles.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, everyone at this table is LAPD city attorney? That's it? Where's the county health department? Who's responsible for this? See, my problem, member, is I don't think we've really got who's responsible. Years ago, in 1952 or thereabouts, we built a building, City Hall South, which really was the Los Angeles Health Department by the city. And then later on, I believe in 1970, we got out of the health business and gave it to the county. Yet there's a missing chair right there that should be the County of Los Angeles to be partners in this. Now, we did have a speaker from the County of Los Angeles, Carol Meyer. Carol, you're still here, Carol? I just want to hear from the County of Los Angeles, which is, she works for the County of Los Angeles? You work for the County of Los Angeles, Carol? Okay, she works for the County of Los Angeles. Okay. Department of Health Services. Just come on up, Carol. This is the County of Los Angeles. Okay, I just want for the record, members, and if you identify yourselves, you're both employees of the County of Los Angeles. What is the position of the County of Los Angeles?
The County of Los Angeles opposes this ordinance, and I think it's extremely important to point out that it's already been said that the county does not do this, and yet the councilwoman indicated that there was a recent case where she herself saw a patient discharged from LAC USC Medical Center. We know nothing about that case.
I understand that, but it could be true because my colleague, and we want to direct everything to the chair, is very active in her district, and for whatever the case may be. But the official County of Los Angeles and its Board of Supervisors feel they don't believe in this ordinance is proper at this time.
That is correct.
Okay. Members, my only point is this here. We are not the agency that is solely involved with the health of the people of this county. Years ago, we gave it to the County of Los Angeles to act. Ms. Hahn, several years ago, and Abak, I don't know where it is, but her special request was that there be a county city liaison officer for the health department. How big a budget is the health department of the County of Los Angeles?
The health department's budget is $3.5 million, and we're facing a huge deficit.
$3.5 billion, and we don't even have a representative liaison that Ms. Hahn suggested, which would maybe help in this case. Because we don't know all the laws completely, as we may know other public works laws. So, members, I can't support this at this time based on the fact that there's a missing chair of a county representative here. Because I think the county should be representative because it's not, in technical view of the ordinance, our job. This is and I appreciate it. I appreciate the concern, especially the great concern that falls on the 9th District and the heart of Los Angeles. But at the same time, I think the county should be shoulder to shoulder with us in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
First, I want to thank Jan Perry for her incredible leadership on this. She has really bit the bullet on an issue that is near and dear to my heart and everybody's heart. You might know this, colleagues, that back when I got elected, one of the reasons I ran was my, in fact, fed-upness with stepping over homeless people, and that nothing really has been done in a major way. So Jan Perry and Eric Garcetti and I talked about the idea, and the Ad Hoc Committee on Homelessness was created so that the buck could stop with us. No more of this, at least at our level. Okay? It stops with the council. It brings in the energy. One of the reasons we did that was Prop 63, which has hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in silos throughout the state. A good portion of that can go to mental illness issues of homeless people. Okay? So we want to grab that money. We want to spend it appropriately. We want permanent housing with supportive services. We're all over the lot, many of us in our districts, dealing with homeless issues and trying to be positive and create a response. One of the things I have found the most disgusting is hospitals discharging patients right there at these service centers downtown. I mean, we got a problem in our society. It's from the federal government on down, folks. It isn't all about us. We're a player in this mess of not supporting those in the greatest of need. I am 100% in favor of this. It's time to draw the line in the sand and say enough is enough. No more dumping, period. And if the county wants to get with us, we want them to get with us. But leadership is with us now. By taking this action, we will be setting up a procedure that every hospital will be on alert that what they must do when that social worker walks in to discharge somebody is find out where are they going and what can we connect them to. Social service agencies must step to the plate at that point. No one should be discharged with an IV in them, in a diaper, in a medical suit. This is a disgrace. So what this will do is put everybody on notice. As much as I appreciate some of the people, Jim Lott's an old friend of mine, been on my show for 20, 30 years and all, great guy and all this. It's time that that industry bit the bullet and came up with a strategy as part of why they have hospitals to connect these folks to services. If they can't connect them, well, they should keep them in the hospital until they're able to. These people should not be released to the street. It's absurd. So this puts the world on notice. LA shows real leadership. Our committee has been wrestling with this for 2 years, and we were over the New Images facility there the other day when people who were dumped on the street spoke. I mean, it is as clear to me as day. The line has to be drawn. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jan Perry, for your leadership. Thank you.
Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. Zine, and I wanted to stand up in support of Ms. Perry's motion and item before us, and to the people who are sitting here. There's nothing worse than a situation where someone is dumped in the communities. As you said, they're getting smarter. They put them around the corner. And what we're saying to people is, we understand it is difficult. We understand that the homeless issue isn't easy, and you have someone who has been on the streets, and you have to find a place. But you know who's dealing with it now instead of the medical is our police officers on the streets. They have become the social workers, and this is not a new phenomenon that has been happening over the years. It's only because of those cameras that we actually found could prove that it was happening. There have been issues where the sheriffs were dumping people and you know, the buses from the other communities, and we had Santa Clarita dumping their homeless people into the San Fernando Valley because they couldn't find a place for that shelter. This is a difficult issue, but no one should push it off onto someone else. Everyone has responsibility, and I think that's what this ordinance says, is it is responsibility, and that people have to do that. And we sued the county when I worked for the mayor years ago, sued the county in the 90s, I think it was the 90s or late 80s, to say, there has to be a partnership in how you do this. There has to be a role that the county plays. And in fact, even though we don't have the health responsibility, we are being forced to deal with it. And that was the whole reason, and Ms. Perry remembers this because she was in the city at the time, that we had to sue to get the attention. And this is what this ordinance does as well. We're going to get the attention of those people who are dumping in our communities and our neighborhood. And I understand where the county may be coming from, but they have to deal with it as well. And the county board of supervisors have to deal with it as well, because this is inhumane when you dump people in those communities and these neighborhoods without anywhere to go. And we've only seen those cases that have been caught on the cameras. We may not even have seen the worst case scenarios of these individuals, like the people who have testified today who are the recipient of these. And so I think it is time for us to stand up and say we are not going to take it anymore, and stand up for those homeless who have no voice for themselves. And so this ordinance is a way in which to do that. And I think, as you described and responded to the questions, there are ways to work with those hospitals and be able to address their concerns. But it is still going to happen unless we have this ordinance, and unless you have a law and you have an enforcement of this law. And so I want to just stand up to stand up for Ms. Perry and say that I support this and the City Attorney's Office and LAPD, because if it wasn't happening, we wouldn't have to do this. And so if those hospitals want to work with us to deal with the problems and the issues, and the county wants to deal with us, let's do it. But just to say no, it's not time, it is time. And it's time for those people who have been dumped. So I just want to stand up, strongly support this ordinance today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I just don't agree at this time right now, because I think our hospitals are in a crisis. I don't want to see them shut the door because on anybody. I don't see it. And then because there's a missing chair there, the missing chair of the county. I do hope out of this, Mr. Rosendahl, because I heard your speech and I appreciate it. Just like when Mr. Weiss passionately talks about Homeland Security and the coordination they do in Norwalk with all the county agencies, maybe we need that here as it relates to our health department somewhere in the facility. All that being said, I have a question for the table on issues. What is the difference between an administrative fine and a criminal fine? What would it personally happen? Let's say you are the hospital administrator. So personally, put yourself in the role of the hospital administrator who has someone who drives a van down, and they get out of the van and they walk into the city of Los Angeles, quote, and does this dumping.
In my opinion, an administrative fine would be absolutely useless. It would take as much process and procedure to impose it as to bring a criminal prosecution, and it will not have the deterrent effect. There are
The state
How many
has
administrative, if I could ask just a question there.
The state has the ability to impose administrative fines, and obviously that has not served as a deterrent whatsoever. So that's why we don't. And as
But does anybody give them an administrative fine?
I'm not aware of any situation where it has, and that's because these are very difficult cases to prove under the current standards. And as Councilmember Gruhl said, it's a situation where they are getting smarter, and it is getting harder and harder. So the current laws are not a sufficient deterrent. Our purpose is to avoid this happening, not to prosecute, and that's why we need the deterrent of potential criminal prosecution. I hope that in my time as chief of the criminal branch, I'm never bringing one of these cases. But unless that potential is there, I think that this will continue. And you know Earl Thomas from our office very well, and Earl has been with our...
I have great respect for Earl Thomas. Not that I don't have great respect for you or anyone else at the table.
Earl is far more deserving of it. He's been with the city attorney's office for 28 years, and reports of hospital patient dumping or homeless patient dumping have been going on for the entire time that Earl has been a deputy chief for the criminal branch. And it's either now or never, and the only way to stop it, we believe, is with an ordinance such as we proposed and Councilmember Perry has proposed.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Weezer.
Thank you very much. A lot has been said, but I do have one simple question, and I'm not sure if it was discussed. Since the city attorney filed its 2 actions against hospitals, has patient dumping gone down since then? Please hold my time.
What we see, council member, is usually after the filing of one of these cases and the publicity around it, then there does seem to be no incidents, but now the requisite number of months have gone by, and now you start seeing them. But again, because the hospitals are getting smarter, it's harder and harder to validate the reports. So we're seeing an uptick recently in dumping reports, and I think that's due to the fact that there has not been any actions filed in the probably about a year. When did we file Hollywood Presbyterian Methodist? About a year or so ago.
Morning, Deputy City Attorney Gordon Turner. Councilmember Weezer, the last action we filed, the City Attorney's Office would have been either against Hollywood Presbyterian or Methodist of Arcadia, and that, as Mr. Isaacs mentions, I believe was about a year ago. However, since then, there have been other dumping incidents that we are still investigating.
Okay. And what did you charge these hospitals with? Where did you, yes?
We charged them with what we call a civil enforcement. We brought a civil enforcement action under the unfair competition law, which is Business and Professions Code 17200, which allows us to use other laws, violations of other laws as predicates. We used dependent adult endangerment, federal laws having to do with homeless or patient discharge, state laws dealing with patient discharges. But this was a civil action that would only result in an injunction and the civil fines or civil penalties, which is akin to, as Councilmember LaBonge said, administrative penalties.
And in the city attorney's opinion, this would have a possibility of a criminal charge will have a more profound deterrent effect on the hospitals.
Yes.
What if it's a sheriff's department dumping? What would you do then?
That would not be covered by this ordinance because this ordinance is limited to hospital facilities. That's another problem to be addressed.
Okay. And if you so aside from the deterrent effect you think this will have, what else do you think this will accomplish?
I think I think there's another important purpose served, which it gives clear guidance to a hospital as to what they cannot do if they choose to transport somebody. They cannot take that person to a location like Skid Row unless, in a case of a homeless person, they give, say, Union Rescue Mission as their principal address, or give written consent that they want to be taken down to that shelter and are given proper information to make that decision as to the situation that they're putting themselves in.
And as of right now, there are no protocols on how your office, LAPD, or the city works with the hospitals on where they put or place these individuals, correct? There's really no communication.
Not correct. There, again, in the Kaiser case, there are very detailed protocols that we believe are a model
There's an injunction in place that is being monitored by a referee who's a former U.S. attorney and district court judge. And we do work with individual hospitals and have worked with them. The problem is that HASC has not been supportive of our efforts.
Yeah.
We would love them to be partners, but they take a different tack.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look, folks, I represent a portion of Skid Row, and when I first heard of dumping in Skid Row, I assumed that the hospitals would got the message. Our city attorney filed some lawsuits, and then you watch the news again and you hear about it again. There was a constituent of mine who lived in Highland Park who went to the hospital, didn't speak English, and somehow he ended up on Skid Row. Some people assume it's because he couldn't communicate with the folks who were trying to get him to his house. He didn't have an address, didn't know where he lived. He was an elderly gentleman, wasn't homeless, had a family at Highland Park, and he ends up on Skid Row. That is ridiculous. I think this is going to give us an additional tool to send a very clear message that that is unacceptable. And on top of that, I hope we sit down with them after this to say, we have something that this council has allowed us to do now, and we got to sit down and develop better means of communication now that the city is playing a role on the dumping problem in Skid Row. Folks, it could happen not only to people who are homeless, it could happen to anybody, just simply because of lack of communication, simply because elderly people don't know and can't remember where they live, who their family members are. We have to pass this motion, give us a tool to continue the dialogue to end the dumping on Skid Row. Thank you.
Mr. Zine.
For the city attorney's office, an individual could be homeless, gets transported to the hospital for some type of illness or injury. That individual has no residence. There's currently a protocol what the hospital is supposed to do before they release that person if they're in fact homeless and no one's going to pick them up. Is that already in place?
There's general guidance in state law as to what the hospital has to do before discharging that person. We don't believe that the hospitals have followed even those general guidelines, but this along with the protocols that we developed with Kaiser would give the hospitals far more clear guidance.
So you mentioned Kaiser. This would apply to all hospitals with an emergency room throughout the city of Los Angeles?
It would apply to any hospital that is either located in the city of Los Angeles or that chooses to dump a person in the city of Los Angeles. So it could apply to a hospital outside the city or the county or even the state. If they bring that person within our jurisdiction, then we, the city, and the city attorney's office will now have jurisdiction to prosecute that organization.
And there already is a protocol for an individual who is hospitalized, who is homeless, who has no next of kin of record, what they're supposed to do. That's already on the books.
As I said, I don't believe that it gives the hospital that kind of clear guidance. The state law, there's general requirements. But the protocols we developed with Kaiser, which are not law, they're just
guidelines.
They're guidelines for that we've again developed with Kaiser that we hope would be a model for other hospitals. They do give very specific guidance as to how to deal with that situation and spell out the hospital's different options.
So whether it's another hospital or not, this law would apply to all of them. So the bottom line is you're not going to dump in the city of Los Angeles.
That would be our hope.
And if they dump in the county of Los Angeles, is there a county ordinance or county law similar to this, or are we going to be unique in this particular arena?
There is a state law that makes it illegal to dump across county lines. There is not, strangely enough, a law that makes it, state or local in this state yet, that makes it illegal to dump somebody within a county. And that's what this will now create, a broader protection for everybody in the city, so they cannot be brought from outside the county or from anywhere else within the county and just plop somewhere against their will or without their written consent.
I support Ms. Perry and commend her on the work she's done on this. Mr. LaBonge had some concerns about the county involved. They're not dumping the county, they're dumping in the city on city streets where it becomes a city liability and responsibility. So if the county wants to get involved, we obviously welcome them, But as far as us protecting the people of the city of Los Angeles, that's what Ms. Perry is doing. So support this. And I think that the commander who was the captain before he was a commander, who was a lieutenant and a sergeant and a policeman, has been dealing with this for many years. And hopefully this will help remedy some of the concerns I know the police department has with the smart teams and all the issues they have to deal with this population that seems to be growing in Southern California. So congratulations, you got my vote, and hopefully you won't have to enforce this against any hospitals. That $25,000 should be enough deterrent to keep them on the straight and narrow. So, Jan, congratulations. It's a wonderful human effort to protect people. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Ms. Hahn, followed by Mr. Labange, Mr. Cardenas, and then Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to stand up and stand with you, Councilwoman Perry, on this ordinance. And it's a very impressive table sitting here with the city attorneys and certainly Andy Smith, who is very credible when it comes to these issues on Skid Row. And I think what's happened, I think, is very much what we've all been saying, is that we had to do something. And this seems to be the tool that we need to prevent this. And hopefully it will be enough of a deterrent. Hopefully the hospitals will begin looking at their policies and having a whole new set of discussions with hospital personnel on how we go about discharging people, and that hopefully will solve this problem. But I think one of the larger issues that Tom Labange brought up today is this relationship between the city and the county. I mean, I think it's critical that we have a better working relationship with the county, particularly with the healthcare system. We know that healthcare system is in crisis right now on a number of issues, and I can't help sitting here listening to this discussion about the policies of hospitals when I represent a community that does not even have a hospital. The Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital closed down and has never reopened, and that's the issue I want the county to really be working on. Hopefully they'll take the energy and not fight this ordinance, but will put all their energy into reopening a hospital that is so desperately needed in the community of Watts. But I do want to say the idea of bringing forth a person in the city of Los Angeles to be our health care liaison between the county, I think is critical. And I think it is important on so many issues, not just this one, but in how the county dispenses health care to the people that we represent. It's not the county versus the city. We all represent the same people, and it is our obligation to protect their health and protect their safety as much as it is the county. Let's use this as an opportunity to have a better working relationship with the county. Let's move forward. I know it's a tough budget year, and it probably won't happen in this budget cycle, but I would really like to see this move forward, having a person that can be at the table from the city of Los Angeles that represents us and can work more on solutions to the problems that we both share equally, as opposed to us having this adversarial relationship. So thank you. I think it was Greg Smith that said if the city attorney and the LAPD and Jan Perry want this, absolutely we're going to support it. It's the right thing to do. But let's all pledge to have a better relationship with the county.
Mr. Labange, then Mr. Cardenas.
I just wanted to thank Earl Thomas for all his years of service, and I appreciate that. Mr. Isaacs, your passion, and also Mr. Turner, the quiet one from the City Attorney's Office. But I do want to thank Andy Smith on this. I do have a difference because I do believe in governance, as you all do, as you all see. But just how the success, Commander Smith, with the combination of you put together this operation in Norwalk on the very big issue of homeland security issues, maybe there needs to be some model in some different form and fashion that puts together on this issue. Because of a city of 4 million people, a city of nearly 500 square miles that has borders that intermingle with other cities, people do take advantage of the big city. And as Ms. Perry described to me the night that someone right in front of her eyes was coming from a discharge of a facility, and her great disappointment to see this happen. I appreciate the work, Ms. Perry, but I do appreciate the governance. So, and the missing seat is where I'm voting for. Thank you very much.
Mr. Cardenas.
I'd like to clarify something. Kaiser Permanente Hospital was mentioned earlier, and I had a dialogue with you, had some questions, and you talked about how Kaiser had some kind of settlement with the city, and things are working much better with Kaiser. I want to make it very clear, when it comes to this ordinance, is Kaiser in support of this ordinance?
I believe so, but I wouldn't want to...
Is there anybody here from Kaiser who can officially make a statement on behalf of Kaiser? Because I was just told a little while ago that Kaiser was not in support of this ordinance.
Mr. Cardenas, if I can respond to that, I know that the lobbyist from the Hospital Association is very angry and is indicating that I have lied about this. I think I would ask Mr. Isaacs to explain the procedural and legal circumstances under which Kaiser has agreed to be supportive of this ordinance, because I think they're operating under an injunction. Am I correct? And let him explain the legal issues to you under which they've been compelled. Because the Carol Ann Reyes, I think, was one of the first dumping cases, and that came from Kaiser Bellflower.
Sure.
So they were one of the early ones to get caught on record and have expressed their willingness. And just for my colleagues, I don't need to lie about this. I don't need to lie about anything. And anybody who would cast aspersions on my credibility and couch it in terms of whether I'm lying or not really needs to stop. Okay? Just stop it.
Okay,
We're
Ms.
talking
Perry.
about human lives here.
Ms. Perry, thank you for that clarification. By the way, when the person mentioned it to me, they didn't mention your name at all. Just want to make that very...
He mentioned it to someone else here in the circle.
Okay.
So Mr. Isaacs can explain the legal issues.
I understand, and the point was made to me not about the association, but about Kaiser specifically and this ordinance or what have you. And I'm glad to hear that things are working out very well with Kaiser. When it comes to the settlement and understanding and the dialogue with Kaiser, that's wonderful. I think that we need to see that kind of dialogue with a lot of other hospitals. It's not a fault of the city staff that maybe that dialogue isn't happening. I'm not trying to blame anybody. In order for people to come to a meeting of the minds, both minds have to be willing to meet. And I can understand how some hospitals might be resistant or what have you. So specifically Kaiser. So Kaiser hasn't come on record to support this ordinance. That's all I want to make clear. I'm not saying whether they like it or not, but there's a difference between an organization officially saying, on record, here's a letter, we support it, we like it, we love it, or what have you. So I just wanted to make that clear. Secondly, back to the issue of state statute. My understanding, somebody told me that there's a paper called the Daily Journal, which is something I guess lawyers read, and that the Daily Journal has some kind of paragraph in one of their articles stating that there have been over 4,400 successfully prosecuted incidents of patient dumping in the state of California, where they've actually prosecuted at least the state law within the state of California. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it is a paper that the lawyers read. I think that whoever, I think they got the statistic wrong. That first off, that's not correct. The city attorney's office and the city of Los Angeles are the first, I believe, governmental unit to actually pursue a hospital for homeless patient dumping. In the state and the nation.
And enforcing state statute?
And using a state law, the unfair competition law, which gives the city attorney the authority to bring an action on behalf of the people of the state of California, using other laws. I've seen a number of 4,400, and I believe that had to do with the number of individuals and clinics and other healthcare facilities that have been excluded based upon conviction, excluded from Medicare and Medicaid or Medi-Cal funding based upon convictions for criminal violations.
But a litany of things, not just patient dumping.
Yeah, my guess is, I can't say for certain, but my guess is that none of that involves homeless patient dumping. It's probably things like healthcare fraud, which is...
even if there were a handful that involved patient dumping, it's still not 4,400 patient dumping cases in the state of California successfully prosecuted.
No, sir. I believe that most of those are individuals. Most of those are doctors probably being prosecuted and convicted for healthcare fraud.
The reason why I wanted to clarify that, because I don't read that journal, and with all due respect, I don't necessarily believe everything that I read in the press, regardless of whether it's a specialty document or if it's just random press. But that's why I wanted to ask you. I figured you probably have a little bit, certainly a lot more knowledge about that than me. So thank you for answering that question, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. Yes, you did receive a letter today from Supervisor Burke, but the board has not taken an official position on this. So that should be noted. And I thank you, Attorney Isaacs, for clarifying the compelling situation that brought Kaiser, and whether it's an injunction or not, factually, this is where they are. The only reason we're here is because people have been dumped on the street. That's the cold, hard facts. The ad hoc committee stands with the city attorney in support of this new ordinance. Just to close, and to remind you, the misdemeanor provision, the operative word is could. It gives the city attorney more teeth and more tools in the toolbox to work with. So I ask you to do the same in supporting this ordinance as it is written, and call a question.
Thank you, Ms. Perry, for your leadership on this issue. And with that, Madam Clerk, please open the roll on this item, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
12 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. That item has been approved.
And that order goes over for 1 week.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. Next item.
Next item is item 11, and that was called special by Councilmember Labange.
Mr. Labange, item number 11.
We'll talk to you. Yeah.
Mr. Labange,
Yes.
item number 11.
Yeah. Thank you. Get over there. Thank you. Not yet. Neil Drucker, please report to the center table. Neil Drucker from Engineering. We're going to make a minor modification on this. Is that correct, Mr. Drucker?
That's correct. Neil Drucker, Bureau of Engineering. And if I could ask the City Attorney, Marcia Gonzalez-Kimbrough, and the CAO, Jackie Wagner, and Maria Carnes to join me, because they would have the specific knowledge of the modifications to the ordinance.
Yeah, basically, we have to do a friendly technical amendment to change the public hearing date from June 4th, and the date should be published, should be May 23rd. We're moving it up?
That's correct.
Okay, and why are we moving it up?
I'll let the City Attorney respond, or Jackie Wagner, I'm sorry, CAO.
We are publishing notice of the hearing, the public hearing, and it's so that we'll have at least 10 days before the hearing, which is scheduled to be heard on the 14th.
Let's say, you say it with certainty, though.
We've asked that the public hearing, the notice of the public hearing be published well in advance of June 4th, and so that there is a 10-day allowance well in advance for the public hearing.
And the
I'm
public
sorry,
hearing...
I think our city attorney could better explain that for you.
Okay, that's what I want to get it clarified.
Could you explain it?
Councilmember, was your question actually why we're advancing the public
Correct.
hearing date?
Correct. Yeah.
It appears that the city staff prepared the report and got it through committee earlier than had originally been anticipated. Advancing the public hearing date to June the 4th gives us more time cushion to actually make any changes based on what council hears at the public hearing, or based on any necessary reprogramming, so that the final assessment can be adopted in time to have everything in place by June the 30th.
Well said. So, members, this is a small technical amendment. No other things need to be done on this here. Please have your staff review this. It's coming forth then, and after the public hearing, so we can hear from the public and make the right adjustments for a very important program administered by the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Engineering, but helps Recreation and Parks and other agencies in our city that provide activities for all of our residents. Thank you.
So if I might clarify then, the motion would be to change the hearing date from June the 13th, which is what was specified in the the steering committee's report, change that hearing date to be June the 4th, and change the date by which notice of the hearing shall be published to be no later than May 23rd.
And that original date, the 13th, has never gone out. We're not...
No.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Right, so we're not jumping in front of the plane's not leaving before scheduled flight. Hasn't been scheduled yet.
Let me just make sure that we are clarifying. Yes, the original report said June the 13th. We're advancing that public hearing date to June the 4th. The original report said publish the notice by...
June 7th. May 23rd, right?
I'm sorry. Okay, item number 4 in the action items on the report that came out of the steering committee said, publish the notice by June the 4th. We're advancing that to be May the 23rd. It said, have the public hearing take place on June the 13th. That is being advanced to be June the 4th.
Great. Okay, thank you. City Clerk, do you have that? Thank you. Ask for an aye vote. Sorry for the long technicality.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. That item is now before us. Madam Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes. 13 ayes. Item's been approved.
Forthwith. Thank you. Thank you, both.
This item had a public hearing in the committee. Next item?
Next item is item 23, and that's requested to be held on the desk after the closed session. Next item then would be item number 25, and that was called special for cards.
Yes, Mr. Matt Dowd on item number 25.
Yeah, actually, due to the long day, I'm going to waive comment on this one, and I'll take up another one. Yes,
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you could open the roll on item 25, close the roll, and tabulate the votes. 13 ayes. Next item?
Item 26, called special for cards.
Yes, Mr. Matt Dowd on item 26, Mr. Zumadog, followed by Sharon Brewer and Miriam Fogler. Mr. Dowd.
Yes, thank you. Triumphant, victorious, daily news, the fee waivers. But let me say that I don't agree with the girls from the Valley because they want to cut all of these fee waivers out, and that's just ridiculous. Lost my voice. Just give me a sec to refine the groove. There it is. Yes, so, no, some of them are very good, and I'm in favor of them, and I don't want the mayor to be cutting the ones that are actually good, but they're getting a little expensive, these block parties. $3,300, Rosendahl and Weiss. Now, see, it should be $330. But some of them are getting reimbursed, which is good. So I want Sharon Brewer to stop counting them all up, too. That's starting to annoy me.
Thank you, Mr. Zumadog.
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Zine, for your support on this as well. Zuma Dog from Zuma Times. I had to bring my own special press mic. This is a very momentous occasion. After 2 years, again, for those of you who missed the earlier public comment, when I first started coming to Los Angeles City Council 2 years ago, I was speaking about Venice Beach, and somebody from the city saw, one of the people here in City Hall pulled me over to the side and said, Zuma Dog, the real money being wasted and just the biggest bamboozle is special event fee waivers. And they handed me a memo that Jack Weiss had in the committee. This is supposed to be for events open to the public, for small community events where you have to pick up some of the fees that can allow it to happen. However, it's turned into a big bamboozle where they're picking it up for, big expensive corporations. And after 2 years of Zuma Dog, Matt Dowd, Miriam, Sharon, and Donna from Van Nuys, Daily News, hooty-hoo! Right there, front page. Fee waivers for events, a costly gift. Zuma Dog's been saying that. They quote Zuma Dog in here, but they have it under Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa's name, and it says here, 3 times a week, the Los Angeles Council writes off thousands of dollars, and Mayor Antonio said, in my budget proposal, I'm saying hold it. In fairness, I was a council member, and I know the pressure you get to do these events when you're looking at a budget deficit of this magnitude with an economy that is in the worst of memory. We're going to have to pare down. The whole city knows I've been blasting here that with the budget deficit you got to pare down. So thank you, activism at its finest, and they are finally listening here. And to read a little bit more, it says that still the council is under constant fire from community activists and gadflies, y'all. That's us, y'all, who complain at the council meetings about this money. It's embarrassing, said Councilmember Greg Smith. He's not ready to cut event fee waivers altogether. And I'd like to say that is important. This is not about cutting all special event fee waivers, only the shady fraud, waste, and abuse bamboozle ones, y'all. Yeah.
Miriam Vogler.
Hello, I thought Sharon was next. Anyway, I just want to say that, this is bamboozle with Matt Dowd and with Zumadog are downplaying the whole thing here, and that's not good what you're doing, because this is all not to be put on the city, these expenses, period. In the old days, they used to have fundraisers. They used to have people bring money. And if they wanted something like this, then they would give money to the city to provide the services. This is wrong to have handouts. If you have handouts for some, then you're going to have it for everybody, and then before you know it, then we'll have no money to provide services to our city. So you can't have a free lunch here, folks. And, employees, they have a right to be taken care of here. And you have no right to shortchange them to have these fee waivers. This is immoral, unethical. And I'm glad that she put the article in the paper, Carrie Kavanaugh. But I think this has been long overdue, and it should be a no vote today, the first time in history. Thank you.
Yes, now Sharon Brewer.
Sharon Brewer, exercising her First Amendment right to make public comment. Item number 26, special event fee waivers. We have 6 total, 5 with amounts, $19,832, 1 to reimburse. I want to take and talk about one, it's for $4,262, the Atwater Village Annual Community Day. The sponsor is the Atwater Village Neighborhood Council, CD 13, Christ Church at Griffith Park. It's meet city representatives, LAPD, mounted and K-9 units, and representatives from the fire department. According to the Dunn website, as of May 1st, the Atwater Village Neighborhood Council has $47,603.20 in their account. So I don't understand why they're asking for a $4,262 fee waiver. They also have not done, they're missing audits from April to June of 07, and they have not submitted paperwork for January to March of 08. Basically, again, the events are good, but they need to find a way of having it without taking the city staff. And the reason you have to waive all the fees is because if you don't, then the city council members will use the excuse that they don't know who to give the fee waiver to or who not to do it. And if it's a blanket, there's no decision on who gets it. The pressure is taken off. But until the city gets out of this deficit, you have to stop them all. And that's my opinion, my First Amendment right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. Seeing no other public comment on that item, Madam Clerk, please open the roll on 26, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. Next item?
Item 27, call special for cards.
Yes. Forthwith, thank you. I think we did 25 forthwith. Ms. Miriam Fogler, on item number 27. Ms. Fogler?
Here's another one that needs to be gotten rid of. The convention...
Then we'll go to 32.
No, we're on... Isn't this about the convention? Okay, so what we need to do is... This is like another expenditure that needs to be taken off the city rolls. Especially, we want to balance the books here, folks. You just voted for the last one, and I know you're going to vote for this one, even though it's in the paper not to do this stuff. And I hope that the voters will hear me now and see what they're doing down here and vote these people out. And don't let them be back in office. We need to show etiquette here that the voters mean business and they're not going to allow this kind of charade to continue to keep voting for this stuff when you know very well we can't afford it. You know very well what you're doing. You're just trying to pass the buck, and it's not going to keep on going like that. Hopefully that there's going to be people are going to rise up like Howard Watts, Howard Jarvis, Paul Gann. They're all going to come back, and Ernie Bernardi, the hero, who stopped you wouldn't have had these in there if Ernie Bernardi was here. He was a beautiful man, and he was the only one that kept a cap on the city, so that he would have not allowed these kind of things to go on with these convention waiving and all that, and then the waiving of the fee waivers. This wouldn't have gone in when he was here. That's the kind of fellow he was. Should have been named after him instead of John Ferraro. He should have been Ernie Bernardi's Hall.
Is she talking about this item number 27?
I think
yes, because indirectly, because Ernie Bernardi would never allow this kind of thing to take place.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fogler. Mr. Matt Dowd.
Yeah, thank you. Let me clear this up right away. This is a convention center fee waiver policy. Now, let's stop spending so much time on those other ones, because we got them under control. This is the one that we're being a little shady with now in the city of Los Angeles. See, this is an event that's sponsored by an organization who does provide services, so it's a commercial event. Now, it really does not serve a public purpose, because this event is not open to the general public. The general public does not have a benefit here. This is a waiver, and look, it's only $1,300, so I really don't want to make too much of this one either, because in the bucket that is the City of Los Angeles budget, this is just a drip. You know, get onto your attorneys who are digging holes in the bottom of the bucket, and all the money's pouring out of the holes into these law firms, outside counsel for all these things and ordinances and violations and things the city of Los Angeles just walks right into when it's obvious, and that's where the budget money is going. So in this particular case, it's only $1,300, and I feel bad for these people that I have to single them out, but let's not be saying it serves a public purpose when it's providing training to this organization. It's not training me. I want to learn all about whatever the YWCA does, except I probably don't qualify. But no, honestly, this does not serve a public purpose. And these ones, I see them come through for $50,000 sometimes. And they're very specific organizations who are benefiting. So let's not talk about the $2,000 block party in Jack Weiss's district. Let's talk about the convention center, but I'm willing to kick this one through because it's only $1,300, but I'm against.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. This item is now before us. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Next item we'll take is 32. We have two public speaker cards, Mr. Zumadog and Arnold Sachs. Mr. Zumadog. Your clock's, you're not. Okay. Mr. Sachs? You've done all of the public hearing today. You have, the last one is your last 2 minutes. Mr. Sachs.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Good afternoon. It would be great at this time if, while you're considering this administrative code modification, you considered just exactly detailing into what makes up an LAPD officer. You have the LAPD. You have the Los Angeles Police at the airport, which are not really LAPD. According to what the chief of police said last year when he looked to take them under the city's control, he mentioned that they don't go through the same training and they're not up to the same standards of LAPD. Yet they carry LAPD qualifications on their vehicles and their uniforms. Then you have the General Service Police, which are not really LAPD, but they're police. Then you have maybe the Harbor Patrol Police, who may not be LAPD either, but they're police also. So the 1,000 new officers that we're looking to hire for the city generally fall into what category? And while you're looking to amend the administrative code, you may also look into, again, the Sunshine Canyon landfill
Excuse
debacle.
me, he's not related, his comments have to be related to this item.
This is regarding the city's policy on bonus, hiring bonus for the LAPD.
The code is being changed to not award the $5,000 because they don't have the funding. And the funding is, part of it could be available by garbage collecting, fees collected from garbage. And if they're not collecting the fees from the landfill, then they're not probably collecting all the garbage fees, but they're charging the public. So yes, it is related, and it's something the council doesn't want to look into. Now, if the council doesn't want to look into it, that's another question. But nevertheless, it is related. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. That item, yes, Mr. Weiss?
There's a revised or amended ordinance, and I'd move that one before us.
The amended version is before us. Madam Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. Our next item is, yes, forthwith? Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We'll do that forthwith. The next item, I believe, is item 29, and there's been a substitute motion that's been distributed. Anyone like to call that item special? If not, Madam Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. That item's been approved.
Madam President, do you wish to clear the desk before going into closed session?
Please.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those will be posted and referred.
There is an excuse on the desk. Councilmember Labange requests to be excused August 5th, 6th, and 8th for personal business that meets council policy.
He'll be excused.
And Councilmember Weezer requests to be excused for personal business on June 3rd. Motion is required, and that would leave 11.
Yes, Ms. Hahn moves and Mr. Cardenas seconds.
And that clears the desk.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, would you like to announce us going into executive session?
Yes, council is going into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.98 to consider the Salt River matter.
Thank you. If we, guards, could please clear the room for our executive session. And reminder again, one staff member per council office will be in the closed session.
Thank you. We are back in open session. Mr. City Attorney.
The clerk will state item.
And the council would be voting on items 31 and 23, and that settlement in the case of Salt River Project Agricultural Improvement Power District and versus Peabody Western Coal, and also an ordinance affecting the settlement, and the city attorney will speak to the settlement as well.
Mr. City Attorney.
And the settlement involves the Department of Water and Power paying approximately $26 million for approximately 19 years as part of its share of the obligation.
Thank you. I think we need to take the vote in open session. Madam Clerk, please open the roll on these two items, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
13 ayes.
Thank you. Those items have been approved. Forthwith on both those items. Thank you.
And that clears the desk, Madam President.
That clears the desk. Any announcements today, colleagues?
Would have been John Ferraro's birthday, the late great President of City Council. Today John was born in 1924, so God bless the memory of John Ferraro.
Thank you. Any other announcements? If not, colleagues, do we have any adjourning motions today? No adjourning motions. So, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Grullhan, Weezer, Labange, Perry, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Westenstein, Garcetti.
We are now adjourned. And the Budget and Finance Committee will meet at 1 o'clock today in the